Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen and thank you for joining me for another journey into the world of shinobi. Before we begin, I want to give a huge thank you to everyone who listens, supports the channel, and enjoys these stories. Today's story is the final part of Child of Hate. What happens when the world's ultimate weapon decides he no longer wants to be controlled, he wants to rule? Betrayed by their own father and thrown to the snake, Naruto and his twin sister Naruko spent their childhood cowering in a cage deep within the hidden sound. In the darkest moments of Orochimaru's twisted experiments, they shared a single, beautiful dream: to escape and build a utopia, a kingdom hidden in the skies. But when the world violently takes Naruko away from him, Naruto's dream of peace shatters into a nightmare of vengeance. Broken, mutated, and pushed beyond the limits of human power, Naruto embraces the darkness they forced upon him. Ascending to godlike power, the Dark Emperor sets his sights on the ultimate goal: global domination, and the total destruction of the shinobi world that wronged his sister. They made him a monster. Now they will bow to a god. This is a fan-made story inspired by the world of Naruto. All characters in the original universe belong to their respective creators. This narration is created for entertainment purposes as part of a transformative storytelling experience. The story itself was written by the Snooze button, and full credit goes to the original author. If you would like to read the original version, the link to this story is included in the video description below. If you like my content and want to keep up with future updates, hit that subscribe button and don't forget leave a like if you enjoyed the video. It not only helps me but helps with YouTube algorithm. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy. Chapter 17. Before Sunrise. 5 a.m. Stone Earth Country Border. Stone Country. A retrieval vehicle dropped down a mile before the main entrance to Earth Country, Stone Country. The large back door dropped down and black metal boots stomped down the ramp. The owner of the boots stopped at the bottom and looked around at the row of gold-ranked frontliners that lined the right side and medics the left, going down several feet. At the bottom there were hundreds of other silver ranks standing at attention, with gold ranks standing behind them, bronze and copper to the sides. Indra, head of frontline soldiers, marched up to Naruto and stopped 10 feet away. He stamped his right foot on the ground and sharply saluted the king. Karen marched to Naruto, stopped beside Indra, stamped on the ground with her right foot and saluted the leader of the kingdom. "Welcome to Stone Country, sir," she said politely, and Naruto smirked a little. He breathed in deeply and released it, savoring the careful organization of his soldiers that stood rigidly outside the retrieval vehicles. He spied roughly 150 more vehicles several yards away, in a neat row and gleaming cleanly. Naruto tucked his hands into his pockets and nodded to his division heads. "It's good to be here, thank you." "Permission to speak, sir," Indra requested, and Naruto waved for his soldiers to be at ease. Each soldier, from platinum rank to copper rank, dropped their hands to their sides, tucked their hands behind them and opened their legs about 2 feet apart. Normally for grounder forces, a military leader was never to be openly saluted, especially by roughly 5,000 soldiers and 2 commanders, division heads. This was because it would notify enemy snipers on who the head of the snake was, making the leader a target. In the kingdom, according to the SFPC Act written by the division heads and assented by Naruto, only the king, the overall commander-in-chief, and those directly appointed by him were allowed the honor of being openly acknowledged by such a large force of fully capable soldiers. To prevent enemy snipers from taking pot shots at the commander, there were support soldiers and hunter ninjas stationed in particular posts to keep watch. The king nodded and Indra spoke. "Stone Country has been fully suppressed and that daimyo has been killed. Her aunt has been reinstated as the new daimyo. Any dissenting voices?" "All silenced," Indra replied without hesitation. Naruto laughed under his breath. "That is excellent. Well done." Indra bowed appreciatively. "Karen, any casualties?" "A silver rank ninjutsu frontliner stepped on mine in the country's diamond cave and the tunnels came down. The rescue soldiers were able to dig out 20 of them, but one among them is still in critical condition." "Wasn't a scout sent in before they followed?" Naruto asked with furrowed eyebrows. "No, sir. Karen replied cautiously. They were chasing a stone team and they were led into the tunnel. That isn't a good enough excuse, Naruto said with narrowed eyes. Make sure they are well treated. Karen nodded and Naruto looked at Indra, his jaw tight and his hands clenched into fists in his black overcoat pockets. Make sure this doesn't happen again. There is a code, a procedure, and I want it is followed. It is why we are superior and any casualty is only because the code isn't followed to the letter. Indra bowed deeply. I am sincerely sorry, my lord. Good. If an enemy ninja or ninjas ran into an unknown subterranean tunnel, then the procedure was to have a scouting team lead the way and make sure there weren't any hidden traps before a frontline team followed. If the scouting team was attacked by the enemy forces, the code also encompassed what would happen. The scouts were all taught fighting styles that would hold back the enemy until reinforcements came. What is the current status in Earth Country? It was Indra that replied among the two division heads. The country is on red alert. The borders have been closed and security around the Earth Country capital has been increased. The Earth Daimyo is currently residing in a panic room with his family, and the Tsuchikage is preparing to launch an attack on this very camp in 10 minutes. The spies, though holding minor positions in Earth Country capital and Iwagakure, were still somewhat close to the respective leaders. You would think a man as old as Onoki would be smart enough to sign the agreement scroll, Naruto said with an amused shake of his head. He's just as headstrong as and you all know how that turned out. Indra smirked and Karen hid her small smile behind her left hand. Naruto couldn't help but wonder though. Why does Onoki want to attack this camp? There are 9 other camps, a few larger than this one, surrounding their country. Your spy says it is because this camp is closer to Iwagakure than the other camps. The king shrugged. If that is so, then we best not keep him waiting. He continued his walk, passing the platinum ranks. The division heads turned around and followed them. Make the order, Indra. The holder of the Kubikaribuka nodded and placed his pointer finger on the ear bud in his right ear, marching behind his leader, muttering commands. Ever so subtly the soldiers that stood rigidly around them began separating in neat rows, stomping away and closing in on Earth Country. Many miles away, the other gold-ranked captains began ordering the same thing, dividing the soldiers into group squads, which were basically large squads that were made up of frontliners, medics, scouts, rescuers and intelligence soldiers. 2 gold-rank squads, 10 soldiers, surrounded Naruto and the platinum ranks as the king proceeded closer to the border. The Rinnegan king shook his head and Indra promptly ordered for the soldiers to move out to join other group squads. The king's overcoat flapped in the subtle wind as he closed in on the country. A force of 1,000 Tsukai soldiers stomped behind him, completely organized and connected together by their earpieces. No one moved out of place or looked away. The smirk on Naruto's face became slightly twisted as he walked before them, a single black focus point that led a large sea of fully capable warriors. A few hours before, after the cinema blimps left. The Hokage's office. The Hokage Tower. Kanahigaku no Sato. Fire Country. He didn't know when the tears began falling from his eyes and flooding down his cheeks. He didn't know when he collapsed onto his knees. He didn't know how long he had been staring at the head sitting on his desk. Jiraiya. Jiraiya the Toad Sage. Jiraiya of the Sannin. The man stared back at him with one open eye, the other one burst, and the blood formerly flowing down the eye was dry and caked up. His frizzy white was cut short to just reach the base of his neck, dirty with blood, most of which wasn't his, and singed by electricity, leaving patches of it bald. His face was purple and blue as bruises, his left cheek was shattered and 4 of his front teeth were knocked out, leaving his wide-eyed, gaping mouth death scream looked more haunted. He was the best of the best. Minato knew that without a doubt. He was his teacher, former teacher. An unranked ninja that had the power to destroy a country if he wanted to, and he was dead. The Hokage limply got to his feet, the eyes that watched him followed him as he walked to his desk, towards the head. The blonde placed his right hand on Jiraiya's head and slid it down, closing the lone open eye and ending it by placing his fingers on the edge of his desk. He swallowed thickly and a tear drop slithered down his cheek and dropped off his chin, onto the dead man's head. His blue eyes saw a small, hand-sized black card lying behind the head. His left hand touched the card, not caring if there was any trap on it, and he drew his hand back to him with the card. He lifted it up, and he clenched his teeth at the gold-inked words. He wasn't worth my time. The card burst into fire and Minato watched it as it crumbled into ashes. His hand dropped to his side and he silently looked at his desk, his eyes narrowed with rage. The ANBU winced as the Hokage violently kicked his desk. The wooden desk smashed against the wall and broke in half, the chair tumbled aside onto the ground and the head rolled away. Minato growled and stiffly walked to his window. His anger fled him as he saw the sea of humanity surrounding the tower. People yelling and pushing against the barricade a few of his ninjas had set up to keep them back. Screaming and spitting for his head. He closed his eyes. Konoha was divided. And it was his fault. His son had played his hand and revealed his dark past for the whole village to see. They wouldn't listen if he told them he did it for them. He could even sense his guards' hatred. He didn't need to touch the ground to feel it. "You've torn us apart, haven't you, demon?" he whispered to himself, staring at the enraged crowd below. "You've shown them what I would do, for them, and they hate me for it." He turned around and before him stood a silver-haired man wearing an orange bandana over his face, hiding his left Sharingan eye. Kakashi tried to hide his disgust at his former teacher. He didn't want to believe that Minato could do such a thing to 2-3-year-olds, not to mention his own children. But being a student to the Yondaime allowed him to glimpse small spurts of darkness from his teacher spanned across his time under the man. The man's eyes drooped for the briefest of seconds before he fixed a glare at the copy ninja. "He took my son, didn't he?" "Yes, sir," Kakashi stiffly answered. "They were on the Hokage's monument, and their flying vehicle captured him. And his teammates. I also saw Sakura knock Junior out and Sai carry him into the vehicle. So they were the demon's spies," Minato muttered. "I can't say I'm not surprised. They were good kids." He tried to smile, but he just couldn't. "Were you able to track where they were going?" "I lost sight of them after they left Fire Country borders, but I suspect they are heading to IWA. Minato nodded slowly and turned back around to watch the chaos his decision had caused. The people against him were looting stores and clashing against those that still believed in him. Minato's grim eyes reflected off the window and he sighed, closing his eyes. "Bring back my son, Kakashi." "Yes, sir," the copy ninjas said lowly. "If you encounter that demon." The Yondaime started. Kakashi stopped before he could leave the door, listening to what the man was saying without turning around. If you meet that creature, do not engage." Kakashi nodded once. "Leave him to me." "Yes, sir." Minato flicked his wrist, and the hidden ANBU left him alone to seethe. The man's body shook and his nose flared. "You took my wife, you took my son, you took my village," he whispered. Fire licked his words and he abruptly punched the triple-reinforced window, cracking it heavily but not breaking the last layer. "I will take everything from you, I will burn it all down, and I will make you watch." He ordered his ANBU guard captain to assemble as many ANBU squads in Jounin and to proceed towards Iwagakure, with him leading the charge. Yugahocho Town. Border of Iwagakure no Sato. Earth Country. Naruto couldn't help but purse his lips slightly and stifle his laugh as his head of frontline soldiers split a town protector in half, from his crown to his pelvis, and swung the sword sideways to cast the dead man into his comrade, who was dispatched by 3 needles to his neck, courtesy of Karen, who marched behind Naruto with 2 platinum Saban launchers jutting out from the armor around her wrists. She lifted her left hand up and pointed at a protector that wanted to dive bomb the Rinnegan King, stabbing him with 3 needles, and Indra finished him off by slamming a solid kick to his neck as he fell down, throwing his away from their king. The platinum-rank swordsman twisted his sword and stabbed it down into a man lying on the ground, choking on the blood that was pumping out from his neck from a slash a copper rank had given him. The blood soaked up into the legendary sword and the division head removed his weapon, looking back at Naruto. The king sent the man a thumb up in approval, walking leisurely through the town. The buildings were being ransacked by his forces, families being driven out and pushed onto their knees, lining Naruto's sides as he passed them, his eyes uncaring and his overcoat fluttering with each step. Fire billowed out from the town mayor's office and several gold ranks blurred past him and flew up into the air with their flight seals and entered a window, engaging more stubborn town protectors. Karen leveled her left hand to her right and clenched her hand, squeezing out 3 Saban bullets into the neck of an overzealous protector that hurtled at Naruto. The woman gasped as the needles broke out from the back of her neck and fell onto her face, dead. All the while, as the town was being torn apart, and the protectors were being either killed or forced onto their knees alongside the civilians, Naruto calmly walked on towards Iwa, his hands still in his pockets, and his Rinnegan eyes glowing with amusement. He spoke over his shoulder to Karen as the girl blasted 3 more bullets behind her to kill a protector that was about to stab a bronze rank. The girl thanked her fleetingly and flew away with her squad into another building. "These people sure are stubborn, I'll give them that." He stepped over a dead body, raptly watching as Indra slashed and destroyed any unfortunate protector that tried to attack him. Karen walked closer to her king and said in a loud voice, speaking over the screams of pain, fires and mild explosions rocking the town. "They are trying to slow our progress to Iwagakure, sir." "Well, it's certainly working," Naruto said sarcastically, flashing a smile at her. He didn't turn or falter in surprise as a protector yelled and blazed to him. He looked at him with dull Rinnegan eyes and smirked. Then before he could get 3 feet closer, a gold rank flashed by, cracking his armored knee into the side of the protector's head, shooting him away and straight into the sharp point of the waiting head cleaver. Indra shook the man off and looked around. Naruto raised his hand and the soldiers, all of them, stopped. The king gave a little smile as he looked around. The people were all on their knees before him. Indra moved closer to Naruto and whispered into his ears. "Do you wish for me to appoint a new mayor?" Naruto slowly grinned at the destruction and looked at his subordinate with his godly eyes pulsing with power. "Make sure the new mayor is smart." It might have been an obvious condition to follow, but the underlying meaning was not lost on the soldiers. Their king wanted a mayor that was smart enough not to fight the kingdom. Like with every new appointed leader the kingdom oversaw, the new leader had to be afraid of the wrath of the kingdom, and to make sure the people he or she led knew the consequences if they tried to fight back. Indra slapped the head cleaver behind him from over his shoulder, and a magnet on his platinum rank armor firmly held the blade in place. He bowed and said, "Of course, sir." Naruto patted his shoulder and moved past him, his grin slowly lowered to a serene smile. He spoke to Karen. "I want 5 squads to stay back for the meantime, just to keep this place in order." "Of course, sir," she said and gave the order through her earbud. The soldiers began gathering behind their king in their ranks and they marched closer to Iwa. Naruto tapped his earbud and said, "Patch me over to Division Head Nora." "Patching you over, Lord Naruto." There was a brief buzz and the light voice of his head of scout and retrieval floated over the line. "Nora here, my lord." "Are you at the Valley of End yet?" he asked. Nora pointed at the mouth of the cave and a scout squad of 5 scouts flooded in to neutralize any trap laid there. She leisurely trudged in and answered, "We just arrived, sir." Calls of discovered traps and their subsequent destruction began calling through the airwaves, though not interrupting the discussion between king and division head. Another scouting team stormed behind her, making sure to map out wherever they passed. This was merely protocol, or procedure, for scouts when they were entering new and uncharted terrain. A team would lead to discover and destroy traps while another followed to map out the place. Zetsu's memories only added more knowledge to Naruto's own accumulated mind. It made him aware of a time longer than history could possibly record and subtle plots that had been churning in the background. "Have you seen Madara?" The woman entered a wide stone-walled room and stopped before a throne where a still pile of bones and flesh sat, connected to a great tree behind him. The person had shaggy white hair that covered his right eye, so thin that it was wonder why he was still in one piece. Nora nodded once. "Yes, sir, but he's long dead." "As I suspected." I want his DNA sample sent to me when I get to IWA, and I want all the information there scrapped and given to the Intelligence Division to look over, just to make sense of it all. Burn that place to the ground and destroy the Valley of End while you edit. Use a grand bomb if you must. Sir, yes, sir. The woman returned. Naruto cut the connection and said, Patch me over to Division Head Hamato. Patching you over, sir. A moment later his head of intelligence and interrogation grunted. Hamato here, sir. A few hours ago he had returned back to the kingdom via retrieval vehicle. What have you been able to get from Obito Uchiha? The man collected a red handkerchief from his subordinate and looked away from the dead Uchiha sitting on the interrogation seat, his head beaten so much it was caved in, his brain crushed to mush. He rubbed the blood off his hands and handed the handkerchief back to his subordinate, gratefully accepting his trench coat and throwing it on. It would take a while to give you the details, sir. Gloss me over the main points. Hamato walked out of the interrogation room and jabbed his thumb over his shoulder at the dead Uchiha. The soldier under his command entered and cleaned up the room, carting the dead man away to be incinerated. A woman in her early 20s rushed up to him with a thin book and Hamato idly read it while the woman walked beside him. His ultimate plans for the tailed beasts was to combine all of them together, seal it into himself and thereby making his Sharingan evolve into an advanced Rinnegan, something Madara called Rinne Sharingan. He signed the last page of the book and gave it back to the intelligence soldier. The woman bowed politely and rushed away into a corridor that split off to their left. A bronze rank hurried to him with a file and he flipped it open. He would then resurrect Madara Uchiha and reflect the Rinne Sharingan on the moon to place the whole world in an advanced version of the Tsukuyomi. Do you wish for me to explain what the Tsukuyomi is, my lord? No, your report on Itachi was fairly detailed about it. Naruto waved him off. The Tsukai forces was now marching through a deserted stretch of road, with the sea of red and black covering the ground behind him for miles and miles. Keep going, this is really interesting. Hamato scoffed and shook his head, circling a few keywords on the intelligence report of the soldiers marching through Waterfall. Since Waterfall had signed the scroll, then they were saved from being attacked, but the ordered show of superior power was still enforced. The bronze rank rushed away with the report. Madara told him that he would combine his strength with Obito, using Madara's would release to contain every human on the planet that was under the Tsukuyomi and drain them of their chakra, though sustaining them with nature chakra while they all lived in their illusions. Knowing Uchiha, Madara lied to Obito and had an ulterior motive. Hamato agreed. Yes, sir. Zetsu informed Obito not to trust Madara. That Madara wanted to steal all the power for himself, unseal a great deity named Kagaya Otsutsuki from the moon and steal her powers as well. A deity, huh? Yes, sir. And you said her name was Kagaya Otsutsuki? Yes, sir. Kagaya Otsutsuki. The king was obligated to keep what he knew secret, but keeping secrets that would have made his kingdom stronger was a risk he didn't want to take. I gathered from Zetsu's memories that this Kagaya Otsutsuki left him on Earth as her physically manifested will, a portion of her soul, if you will. The division head nodded as he listened. Zetsu has been manipulating the world towards the direction of unsealing this deity, his mistress. Like you said, it would take a while to fully explain what I'm trying to get at, but my point is that there is currently a person of great power trapped in the moon. What do you want us to do, my lord? Hamato questioned lowly, implying that their king didn't even need to lift a finger before he got what he wanted. I'm not sure yet, but I'm thinking of unsealing Kagaya and absorbing her chakra and her soul. It will surely make you even more powerful, Lord Naruto. I'll make my decision when I get Madara's DNA and Nora's report from her mission to VOA. He could see IWA ninjas storm out of the gate towards his soldiers and he said to Hamato, I'll leave you to compile your report on Obito. I also want you to see what you can get out from the information Nora and her team gather from the VOA. Understood, Lord Naruto. Naruto cut the connection and began a steady jog towards the hundreds of ninjas running towards them. His soldiers gradually increased their marching speed, moving about in their ranks as Indra gave commands for them to prepare. Taijutsu specialist frontliners, gold to bronze, moved to the front, Genjutsu specialists moved to the back, guarding the medics at the far back. Ninjutsu specialists were at the sides, flanking the rescue soldiers, and finally the intelligence soldiers were safely sidled in the middle. 1,000 soldiers separated and formed the same ranks, pushing the rest back, with the intelligence soldiers, and charged behind their king and his 2 division heads. The king lowered his head and his arms flew behind him as he squinted his eyes in concentration. He blurred forward at high jounin speed and his division heads bravely followed closely behind him, Hamato clasping the head cleaver in his right hand and Karen clenching her fists, the Senbon launchers ready. The IWA ninjas bellowed out their war cries, but the soldiers stayed professionally soundless, blazing over the ground with quiet metal boots towards their opponents. Naruto leaped straight forward and cracked his knee into the face of the man that led the charge, entering the thick of the soldiers and carving a path of twisted, mangled bodies in his wake while the other Tsukai forces slammed into the IWA ninjas without mercy. "Oh, this is interesting," the king muttered, standing on a pile of dead IWA ninjas. His overcoat flapped in the wind as he stared with an amusedly raised eyebrow at the Tsuchikage, Oanoki of the dust release, hovering in the air. Naruto lazily leaned back a little and regarded the short, old Kage with a quick sweep of his Rinnegan eyes. Around the giant pile of human bodies he stood on, the battle was still heavily waging between IWA ninjas and the Tsukai forces, with the group mentality of the armored soldiers overpowering the ninjas, but Naruto left them alone to fight, while he stared off with the village's Kage. His eyes slowly dropped to the ground far below the man, and his red-ringed eyes clashed against the dark eyes of a girl a bit older than him. His eyes slid to her left and his smirk lifted up a little at the burly, borderline fat, IWA ninja standing to her side in a guarded stance. Finally his eyes stopped at man far older than the 2 teenagers that bore a striking resemblance to the girl. The wind tousled his spiky red hair, and he cocked his head to the side, shooting his powerful eyes back to the enraged Kage. The corners of his lips quirked up a little, a small innocent smile resonated off his pale face, making the ninjas standing at the bottom of the pile of corpses step back in surprise. Naruto opened his arms with his hands still in his overcoat pockets, showing the ninjas his red shirt and black pants, then the segmented armor on his neck and base of his chin, a welcoming gesture. "The whole family is here." He dropped his hands back to his sides and looked from the older man to the robust boy, to the girl, and then to the Kage, saying, "Ryotsuchi, Akatsuchi, Kuratsuchi, and Oanoki." His eyes swept to his feet at the dozens of ninjas that made up the pile up under him, idly commenting, "I bet you regret not signing the scroll now, Lord Oanoki. Go to hell, filthy leaf scum." The man spat and the soldiers pressing violently down on their opponents froze, pushing weapons down on the necks of the IWA ninjas and holding them in submission. Naruto's soft smile never wavered as he cocked his head to the other side, his eyebrows furrowed. "Excuse me?" He blinked twice and straightened up, still looking at the Kage with a question in his godly eyes. "What did you just call me?" The soldiers all held their breath as their king's voice easily carried over into their ears. They finished off the IWA ninjas they were holding down and snapped into attention wherever they stood. A few flew into a Wagakure and began rounding up the civilians and ninjas there. The Tsuchikage's eyes lit up when he noticed a mild discomfort on the king's suddenly stiff shoulders. He capitalized on it like a wolf on an injured lamb. "You aren't the only one with reliable spies. We all know you're the bastard son of that brat, Minato." Naruto pursed his lips and shook his head slowly. No, I know I'm my father's son, I know he disowned me and my sister, but that's not what you said before." He steadily removed his hands from his pockets, and placed them at his sides, inclining his head to the right and looking into the Kage's eyes. He asked again, "What did you call me, Oanoki?" The man smiled savagely and unhurriedly said, "Filthy leaf scum." Naruto's smile widened a little and his right hand opened. Ryotsuchi chalked and shot towards Naruto. The king caught the man by his face in a strong claw and he evilly grinned at the wide-eyed Tsuchikage. "Am I now? Leaf scum? Dad!" Kuratsuchi and Akatsuchi cried. He clenched his fist and the father's head exploded in his grip, soaking his black armor in blood and brain matter. The man's dead body rolled off the pile and stopped at the ground. Naruto never looked away from Onoki. "Answer me," he ordered. "Filthy brat!" Onoki wailed and slapped his palms together. "Wrong answer." Akatsuchi gasped and found his face in Naruto's bloody hand. He vainly clawed and cursed against the iron grip, kicking wildly but went limp as his chakra was sucked into the king's body through the Naraka path. Onoki froze, his mouth open to yell out a Kekai Genkai attack as he saw his grandson in the grip of the teenage king. "Answer me, Onoki!" Kuratsuchi blazed towards Naruto, a glowing white cone of dust release growing between her hands. But the king's eyes pulsed strongly, throwing her back down the pile and driving her feet into the ground. He forced the girl onto her knees and her hands behind her, her forehead placed on the ground. Not once did he look away from the Tsuchikage. The man grated, soft white chakra surrounded his closed palms, blood roared through his body and he yelled, "You beast!" Naruto shook his head in exasperation and the teenage boy's head blasted open as he closed his fist. He released Akatsuchi to roll down and meet his dead father. He rolled his eyes and flicked his blood-stained right hand to his side, casting away the blood. "You'd think a man as old as you would also be wise. Let's try again, shall we, and I'll repeat the question in case you've forgotten." Kuratsuchi's torso snapped up and she limply flew to Naruto. He caught her by her face and smiled down at her, speaking to the Kage. "Am I really leaf scum?" Tears ran down her cheeks and her eyes were bloodshot from pure, unfiltered rage. Naruto savored her anger masterfully as he stared into her eyes through his fingers. The Kage finally separated his hands and held them to Naruto, pleading, "PP, please don't dash." Naruto's neck rounded at him, and he glared. "I will not repeat myself," he snarled, and a grisly crack echoed through the battle zone. And the girl screamed. Her arms dangled limply below her, broken from her shoulders to her forearms with a particularly strong gravity crush. Naruto held her up by her face, preventing her from falling in a heap on the ground. "You're not!" Onoki yelled desperately, steadily getting closer to Naruto with his hands placating the king to calm down. "You're not leaf scum." "Very good," Naruto said, drawing out the last word, his face changing from feral to soothingly calm. "Now was that so hard?" Kuratsuchi panted painfully in his hand, her eyes wrenched shut as she tried to think of anything other than the pain of her two broken arms. Naruto chuckled. "She certainly thinks it wasn't. Now please," Onoki said, gradually getting closer to Naruto, holding out his hands with his palms facing the sky. "My granddaughter, please." The king held up his left hand and Onoki stopped, hovering in place. "Wait." His smile dropped into a smirk, and he tilted his head to the side. "I was really hoping to kill you." He threw Kuratsuchi to his side and a gold rank caught her before she could hit the ground. "Fix her up." The ninjutsu specialist soldier nodded and called for a medic team to come to his position. Onoki used that chance to slap his palms together, and Naruto patiently waited, watching as the Tsuchikage separated his hands in a glowing, white cube with a white center spinning between them. "Like hell you'll kill me!" he roared and sent it to Naruto. The cube of destructive dust release zipped to Naruto at an astonishingly fast speed, enough to make Naruto mildly impressed. He stomped his foot, the world moving a little bit slower and allowing the cube to flash a bit more slowly. A head of a dead IWA ninja ripped off and the king spun on his left heel, slamming the head towards the dust release cube. The head passed through the cube and left as thin particles, destroyed at a molecular level. It didn't slow the cube down, and Naruto's smirk lifted up higher. He hopped over the cube before it could slam into his chest and the dead bodies on the pile rumbled, lifting up and flying towards Onoki as the Kage sent over more dust release cubes, barely slowing the down enough for the king to dodge them. "Stand still, brat!" The man growled as drops of sweat rolled down his forehead. His hands started shaking as he tried to keep sending over dust release cubes. Naruto shifted in the air smoothly and said, "I hear your Kekai Genkai is taxing on your chakra." His curiosity got the better of him, and he stayed in the path of a particularly blazing white cube of devastation. As it got about 3 feet away, it stopped in the air, surrounded by hazy blue chakra that surrounded it in a tight circle, which it bounced around inside like a ball. Naruto squinted at the cube, slowly flying around the Preta-summoned chakra containment field. Oanoki's hands fell down as he gaped, out of breath. Impossible. What should be impossible is your Kekai Genkai. Naruto idly commented as he moved back to his original position facing the Kage. A combination of 3 nature transformations, one of which should neutralize the other, capable of destroying even an army of 100 soldiers if it so much as touches them. The containment field began to shirk and the cube bounced faster inside it. Naruto looked from the white cube inside the blue circle to the wide-eyed Kage. I wonder, though, what happens if it is somehow sent back? The blue field shrank again and the cube shrank with it, bouncing and moving at a frenzied speed. Naruto gave a half-smile as he remembered a note Orochimaru had made during his visit to Iwagakure. Isn't the only one that can beat a person using dust release another person using dust release? The blue field phased into non-existence, and the white cube shot out, hurtling fast enough to leave a fiery trail of white chakra in its wake. Oanoki held out his palms outwards, as if to catch the cube, but yelled as the white cube he had sent over, compressed tightly into a smaller, more powerful dust-release cube, eat up his arm to his elbows before it dispersed as it somehow recognized its sender's chakra too late. Loopholes, huh? Naruto said with an entertained smirk. His knee rose up and deflected a kick the armless man sent with his shin. He swished aside from ahead but slid under the man to his back as another kick went after his face, and he grabbed the man by the back of his head with his right hand and jamming his left pointer and middle fingers into the base of his skull. Oanoki's mouth dropped open in horror as his vision faded. Blood gurgled up his throat as Naruto removed his bloody fingers and drove them between the old man's shoulder blades, shutting down his chakra. Naruto then smashed his left knee into the Kage's lower back, tearing his spine in two. The air easily held the Rinnegan King and the Kage as the former controlled gravity to stay in the air. The man still refused to die, panting pitifully and coughing out thick globs of blood. His throat was too clogged up to speak and a tremor rocked his old body as blood started slithering out of his ears. Now I'm not going to kill you, Oanoki, not now, you'll serve an even greater purpose. The Kage wheezed and grunted. He tried swallowing but ended up worsening the blood pouring from his ears. His hand tightened on the old man's skull and the man gurgled, swaying side to side as he weakly tried to move away from the Rinnegan King. You really should have signed that scroll, Oanoki, but I'll be honest. A twisted, evil smirk crawled onto his face as he whispered audibly for even those far under him to hear. I was hoping IWA didn't sign. Why? Kuratsuchi yelled from the ground. 2 medics were occupied with fixing her arms, 1 for each medic, but she was prevented from moving by the chakra suppression seal and body paralysis seal combination, administered by a member of the Fuinjutsu division. She glared hatefully up at the Flying King and the medics shared a look, then rolled their eyes and continued healing her by roving glowing green hands slowly down from her shoulders to her fingers. Why are you doing this? What will you gain? An entire major hidden village under my control, an entire country under my command. Naruto answered, looking down at her from the sky as he steadily descended down to her. She defiantly glared at her, but as his black metal-booted feet touched down next to her she closed her eyes and turned away, gritting her teeth at how scared she was of the Red Ring team. A chance for my forces to show their superiority against Earth Country's best. He dropped the man carelessly and squatted down to her. The medics moved aside and knelt on one knee in a deferring position. The men standing around bowed as well. A chance to fight a Kage. Lots of reasons, Kuratsuchi. Her jaw clamped shut, and she refused to look at him, or open her eyes. You will be the new Tsuchikage. He stood up and said. You were smart enough to want to sign the scroll, but your grandfather was too stubborn. He walked away and the medics returned to fixing her broken arms. Oanoki lifted off the ground and followed after Naruto, drifting through the air like a lifeless doll. I've got something special in store for you, Oanoki. The king stomped to a training ground and a scout landed before him, presenting a cylinder of Madara's residue chakra, flakes of his skin and his shriveled-up heart, all contained in different sections of the forearm-length cylinder. The scout left his king, leaving Naruto with Saibugu. He looked over his shoulder, tearing his eyes away from the cylinder of Madara's DNA. Tell Division Head Uakuso, head of espionage and infiltration, to assemble all the other division heads and begin setting camp around Fire Country. We are to properly invade after Iron Country is subdued. My sister should be with them as well. The cyborg woman nodded. Yes, sir. As the woman began mentally transmitting the message, still holding up the camera to record Naruto, the Rinnegan King looked back down to the cylinder and scoffed, then to the former Tsuchikage. You don't mind if I trade in your soul for someone else's, right? It wasn't like with Naruko that Naruto had to trade Danzo's soul to resurrect her. Naruto simply wanted to make use of the impure world resurrection technique to bring the Uchiha back. A human soul exchange was still necessary. A dark cloud loomed over the training ground and the temperature of the surrounding area became frigid as Naruto resurrected Madara Uchiha. Chapter 18. Sakura and Sai didn't hide their armor underneath a chameleon camouflage illusion anymore, wearing their silver rank body armor under their standard Tsukai Kingdom red shirt and black pants. The pink-haired medic spy wore blood-red kickboxing gloves, which flew behind her as she lowered her head, running beside Sai in a ninja run. The pale, emotionless spy had an average-sized paper pad in his left hand and a brush wet with ink in his right, while a crimson-red tanto was slung on his back. The two high-ranking soldiers stayed professionally quiet, following after an equally speeding blonde-haired teen that was not in any kind of Tsukai armor but rather a short-sleeved white shirt, black pants and black sandals, with bandages wrapped around his toes to under his knees, and his fingers to his elbows. His weapon of choice were two short scythes strapped onto his back and connected together by a chain that wound around his wrists, clanking quietly as he blazed forward with his teammates. Around them and carefully hidden by the thick foliage of the Fire Country forests, were 25 other silver ranks and a platinum rank that sped ahead of the silver ranks in the middle. The platinum rank was a young teenager girl that had mint green hair, healthily tanned skin and in the standard combat uniform every soldier wore. She had a pink backpack with artful drawings of unicorns and rainbows on her back, something that threw Junior off every time he looked at it, but the girl, feeling his eyes, ignored him in favor of leading the quickly moving group of soldiers. The group was deathly silent, the only sound being dry leaves crunching under their feet and the wind that whooshed through the trees. As they neared the capital, Magi Harai Gamatomo, head of the Fuinjutsu division, signed to the soldiers under her command and 5 soldiers at a time, they lifted off into the air and shimmered out of sight. Sakura and Sai grabbed the gaping son of the Yondaime under his forearms, and wind blew out from under their silver boots, taking them into the sky. The silver rank's armor rippled and they merged with the midday sky, leaving just Junior to try and understand what he was to do, seeing as he didn't have the chameleon camouflage illusion armor. An idea finally came to him as they neared the first sentry post west of the capital's walls. The 2 silver ranks holding up the blonde boy came closer, and Junior clapped his palms together and flipped through 3 hand seals, whispering, "Transformation technique." Thin smoke blew from his body and the 2 silver ranks blew it away before it could be noticed, or sensed by the sensory detection barrier combination seal 100 yards away from the physical wall surrounding the fire capital. Out of the chakra smoke flew a fluttering hummingbird with golden wings and beak with a dark red torso, which quivered with excitement as it zipped back and forth. The beautiful bird attracted only a few eyes as it raced over the capital, but not too many people actually stopped to admire it, seeing as the entire capital, and the country at large, was in a state of panic. Even though it had been a day ago, the video revealing the true nature of the Yondaime Hokage was still fresh in the minds of the citizens of Fire Country. No one knew what to do with the information except for isolate the Hidden Leaf Village, thinking if they made contact with them then they would face equal wrath with it at the hands of the king of the Tsukai Kingdom. Several hours ago, there had been frantic signals sent from the countries around the Fire Country. Before they were all silenced almost at once, not even able to finish what they had been trying to warn about. One didn't need to be a genius to know that the Tsukai kingdom had started its global invasion, and the effects were showing. Pictures and videos of people in different colored armor marching around the border of the country, keeping a careful eye. This would only happen if they had somehow defeated their neighbors. Their dazed minds cast away the hummingbird in favor of fortifying their capital's walls and evacuating from their homes into secured, underground bunkers. It took roughly 20 minutes before the team got to the other side of the capital and landed soundlessly. 10 more yards away and they flickered into sight, with Junior removing the hinge. Magi held up her right hand and signed over her right shoulder, and 2 scouts rushed past her in small gales of wind. Then they returned 10 seconds later, nodding their heads. The youngest division head spoke into her earbud to her team. There are 2 Konoha teams coming in and one is being led by the Kakashi Hatake and the other is Minato Namikaze. She stopped and shot to her left, hurtling towards Kakashi, Tenzo and Yugao, while Minato and his ninja force blasted past them to their right, 2 focused on heading to Iwagakure to notice them. We will handle Yamato Tenzo and Yugao Yuzuki. Team 1, it's show time. Yes, sir. Sai, Sakura and Junior replied. Sakura kept up with Junior and whispered. What's the plan? Triple tandem, like in Spring Country. Using a team attack defense that Kakashi taught us, that's cold. She said with a lopsided smile. Sai hopped closer to their tightly running group, their assigned escorts, 3 Fuinjutsu teams, a ninjutsu specialist team, 3 taijutsu specialists and 2 scouts, making 1 team, dispersed into the environment, zeroing in on the group of 3A rank jounin as they rushed towards the capital to track where the retrieval vehicle had gone. Colder than finding out my own teammates had been serving my long-lost brother for the past 7 years. 8 years, Sai corrected without caring. We were 5 when he freed us from sound. We were only obeying orders. Lord Naruto, your brother, ordered us to keep an eye on you and on Konoha, and he specifically told us not to tell us about our connection to the kingdom. Sakura whispered, shooting her emerald green eyes to her stoic, blonde teammate. You can whine about it later, Dickless. We have a mission to complete. Triple tandem. Junior simply grated. Hi. The 2 replied and separated, Sakura going left and Sai going right while Junior kept running forward, straight at Kakashi. Junior by himself wouldn't have been able to fight Kakashi on an even close level, seeing as the boy was just about high Chunin and Kakashi was high Jounin, if not mid-Kage level. But the brother to the king had 2 silver ranks by his side that were sent with him as support. Silver ranks were roughly equated to grounder ninjas that were mid to high Kage, and there were 2 of them and a mid-Chunin teenager. Magi Harai Gamatomo, head of Fuinjutsu, led the charge and bolted head first to the katana-wielding ANBU captain, Yugao Yuzuki. The mint-haired girl reached over her shoulders into her pink, girly backpack and pulled an almost impossibly large gold and red battle fan with 12 high-level seals etched onto the corners and the grip. The girl clashed her iron fan against the sword of the older female, eliciting violent sparks to rain down between them. They pushed each other away and Yugao dove back to Magi while the girl opened her fan behind her, making dust blow about from her, and bent her knees in a ready stance, holding a half-ram in front of her chest with her left hand. Wind release, heaven's crop harvester storm. She spun on her heels, dodging a slash to her neck, and swept her giant battle fan at Yugao, her hand still in the hand seal. The Jounin Anbu cussed foully as she cut through an invisible wind sickle, hacking and slicing more and more as they rained down at her. Her body moved in a blur of speed, sensing every wind attack before they arrived and countering by cutting through them with her seal-reinforced weapon. The woman grit her teeth as she crossed her blade over her chest as Magi dashed back to her, bringing down the tremendously heavy fan down on the older female, making Yugao wonder how such a small, fragile-looking girl could be so vicious or even strong enough to carry such a weapon. The platinum rank and the Jounin Anbu fought with blood in their eyes for dominance. The silver rank stationed to escort Team Junior flipped and flew over the 2 fighting females, their eyes zeroed in on Tenzo. Kakashi had been thrown away by a wind jutsu. Sai and Sakura had formed, a sort of small tornado that ripped the man off his feet and several yards away into a small glade. Tenzo had been chasing after the man as he saw the two former Konoha genin, now missing ninjas that were also high-ranking soldiers of the Tsukai Kingdom, blaze in Kakashi's direction. The two had obviously spent most of their ninja career in Konoha holding back. Sakura was not fidgeting or trying to arrange her pink hair, rather her green eyes were focused, and she was running at speeds a genin was not able to run. Sai did not wear any fake smile like he usually did in every situation. The boy's eyes looked dead and hollow, like that of a mindless robot, but Tenzo knew better. The two silver-armored 13-year-olds were loyal to only their king and they would rather die than not give 100% in a mission their king had given them, just to impress Naruto. He didn't see Junior, but he could feel him hopping on trees towards his former teacher. No doubt the boy was wielding his dual sickles, the chains connecting them wrapped around his arms and his upper torso clinked against each other, as their bearer bounced off tree branches. Tenzo skidded to a stop as a different, unknown person wearing silver armor dropped down before him. 4 more people joined in and 5 people appeared at each side, while the last squad of 5 silver ranks stayed back as support. The Jounin looked around at them and, as one, the silver ranks dropped into fighting styles. The Konoha ninja recognized the stance as something he read from the library called the Red Sinner Seal Master Stance from Yuzushio. It was fighting style seal masters learnt. This could only mean that every single person around him was a seal master. All 25 of them, he assumed. If that was so, then fighting them could go either way. They could turn out to be high-ranking seal masters, maybe level 7 or 8, and seal away his chakra, preventing him from using his Kekai Genkai, or they could be bad at hand-to-hand and fully dependent on seal work, which wouldn't be that good either. I'm only going to say this once. Tenzo started, his eyes darkening as he looked around, glaring murderously at each silver rank. None of the soldiers faltered. Stand down and allow me to retrieve Lord Force Sun. There is no need for unnecessary, avoidable bloodshed. The silver ranks remained silent. The only response the would-release user got was 2 of the squads on his left and right surging towards him, while the ones in front and behind him fanned out. Fine then. The man grunted and quickly scuffed his right toe into the ground. He lowered his center of gravity and clapped his hands together. Would-release secret technique, birth of dense woodland. The ground opened up and a green sapling popped out. The earth rumbled barely half a second later, and the sapling grew till it was dozens of feet tall. The giant tree groaned and its roots lifted out of the ground, grabbing hold of the silver ranks that rushed to it, and chasing after the 10 others that ran around its edges, dodging the roots by flipping onto trees. The great tree had widened their fighting area exponentially, forcing Yugao and Magi to flee before they too could be caught in the roots or branches. The smaller trees were torn out of the ground and tossed away, somewhat creating level ground for miles around. It also allowed Tenzo to see Kakashi and his former team. The man bent down and prepared to leap to the masked man but fell off the top tree branch as it wobbled. He grabbed onto another branch before he could fall to the ground, and looked down with his large eyes. At the bottom, the 10 silver ranks that skimmed the edges were running around the tree with large brown scrolls in each of their hands, opened up to show the kanji for compress/pressure. Secret Tsukai technique, Fuinjutsu, undersea demon pressure. They all called, and the ground there was an almighty snap as the trunk of the tree was pushed smaller. Undersea demon pressure! They roared again and the crack shook the tree, shaking off the leaves, dropping Tenzo. The silver ranks never stopped running around the tree with the scrolls held firmly in their hands, while the 5 support seal masters rushed to Tenzo before he could land. The silver ranks trapped in the tree clenched their hands and muttered. Nin Fuinjutsu, combination jutsu, wind and fire, inflating rubber ball. Their silver armor rippled and heated up, turning a scorching red hot. Thick white steam hissed out of the roots that stubbornly held. The tree moaned pitifully as it tried to keep a firm grip on its prisoners, even as the fire coating the soldiers began expanding out of their bodies. The wood-release technique was most definitely not as strong as when the real, original wood-release holder used it, not even by a long shot. The soldiers slipped out of the branches and dropped down onto the ground. They then went to support the other silver ranks fighting Tenzo, idly looking over their shoulders as the great tree was steadily reduced into a 4-foot cube by their comrades. The almost even ground without trees gave those in the capital a good view on the 3 different fights happening at the same time, especially those that could look over the walls. The daimyo debated on whether to send reinforcements but ultimately decided not to. He needed all the help he could get protecting his life and the lives of his family. The Konoha ninjas were on their own. Shining gold seal sabers erupted out of the forearms of the Tsukai silver ranks, and curved up to their fingers a foot long. Tenzo's arms broke apart, and wooden blocks swept around to the approaching the silver ranks. With Kakashi and Team Junior. The silver-haired man sighed and looked at the person before him with half-lidded eyes. He was leaning back lazily. The general aura permeating from his form was that of a sleeping dog. Junior tightened his stance and bravely looked back, shooting a look to Sai and Sakura, who were in a triangular formation with Kakashi in the center. The man puffed out a breath and his shoulders hunched. "I see you got to your brother, huh, Junior?" "I didn't get to my brother got to me," the blonde replied. "I want to be part of the family, and the only way I can do that is—" He grit his teeth and lowered his center of gravity by widening his legs and bending his knees in an almost perfect 90-degree angle, crossing his forearms and clenching his twin sickles in both hands. A fire ignited in the teen's sparkling blue eyes and he snarled. "The only way I can be part of the family is by killing you. If that's what you want, but I won't make it easy for you," the man said resolutely, looking over his shoulders at the 2 high-rank soldiers, both of which were in their different fighting stances and both wielding their signature Tsukai Kingdom-administered weapons. A pair of blood-red kickboxing gloves for Sakura and a red sketchbook and black brush for Sai. The man didn't need to have his Sharingan exposed to know that both of his former students were high-level soldiers in their own right. The intel he had gathered from Spring and Kumo was that copper was the lowest rank and they were roughly about as strong as an average special jounin. Bronze was the next, and then it was silver. The jounin closed his eye and said to them, "I knew you two were hiding something." Sai raised an eyebrow. "Smart man. We don't have time for banter. Junior, this is your call." Sakura called over to the blonde, and the younger brother to the king nodded curtly. "Let's do this," the boy said, and his body phased out of sight. Kakashi smoothly moved aside, barely dodging the deadly sickles as they came down. He lifted his leg and a poison ink dart jammed into the ground and he back-flipped over Sakura as she drove a fist towards his upper back, between his shoulder plates. The girl slammed her fists together, and her fists glowed red. She rushed at Kakashi again as Sai did the same behind her. The jounin removed 2 kunai from his pouch, spun them in his hands and clashed them against Sakura's fists and Sai's black tanto. His eye widened as they cracked, and he spat out a curse as Junior appeared out of the ground and wrapped his whole body, from his feet to his neck, in chains. "Hide art, secret Uzumaki chains," the boy grated, his legs wrapped around Kakashi's torso from behind and his arms crossed around over the man's neck, the sickles gleaming in his hands. He opened his arms, slashing his weapons deep into the man's neck as he did so and flickered away as a mild explosion rocked the ground as the clone exploded. He hopped and skipped back, dodging rocks that pelted at him from the thick smoke. His chains warped out of the smoke and wrapped back around his arms. "Sai! On it!" the pale boy whispered, and he drew a slash in his sketchpad. A golden kanji for control glowed at the back and wind poured down from the sky, blowing away the smoke and allowing Sakura to dive back in, her fists leading the way. The jounin now had his Sharingan exposed, spinning madly in its socket as he engaged the taijutsu expert in hand-to-hand. He saw 3 afterimages following the girl as she thrust strikes at his face. He dodged all 3 attacks and grunted as an invisible fist still smashed into his face, flinging him towards Junior, who dug his heel into the airborne man's back, changing his flight direction towards Sai, who spun in his heel and cracked his right elbow into the man's face. A shadow clone burst into sight, distracting Sakura with its smoke and allowing the man to catch himself by skidding onto the ground, nursing a possibly broken nose. He saw silver glint in the corner of his Sharingan eye and he pulled out another kunai to block a tanto from Sai, gritting his teeth as it cracked. His other hand shot out and grabbed Junior by his neck. He looked at the boy with his red eye, trying to force an illusion on the Yandame's son, but the boy crossed his sickles and whispered, "Hide in art, Uzumaki escape artist." His body clattered on the ground as several silver chains, before they too burst into chakra smoke. A small cyclone of spinning chains swirled above the copy ninja and the blonde dropped down onto Kakashi's shoulders. Sai pushed harder with his tanto, forcing the man's feet to skid across the ground, and Sakura joined in, pushing the man back with stubborn blows. "Enough of this!" Kakashi roared, and white chakra blasted out of him, scattering the 3 13-year-old ninjas. A white Susanoo arm reached forward and caught Sakura as she got her feet under her, just about to touch down. He clenched her in his fist and swung her at Sai, who was sniping at him with poison ink darts shooting out from the back of his sketchpad, which glowed with the golden kanji for darts. The artist coughed as Sakura's head smashed into his, shooting both of them into the ground several yards away. 10 dog summons burst out of thick white smoke and chased after the 2 silver ranks. The pure white Susanoo, barely a torso, a head and a pair of super strong arms, growled and turned to Junior, who was running alongside it, his sickles sheathed on his back. It laced its fingers together and slammed them down, missing the blonde as he began flipping through hand seals. The copy ninja's Mangekyo saw the seals and he swept the massive arms across the ground after the boy. "Water release, Kyriegakure crystal water death." He lowered his body and ran his hands on the ground. Sharp blue crystals began jutting out the ground inside the Susanoo. Kakashi winced as a spike skimmed over his side. His Sharingan pulsed and he leaped out of the white chakra creation, nailing the 13-year-old boy with a solid kick to the face. Junior crashed into the ground and rolled limply. Sakura swept the boy into her arms, her fists coated in dog blood and a purple gash on her temple from where her head hit the other silver ranks. Sai jumped over the medic and engaged Kakashi in a fast-paced taijutsu fight as his female friend placed her palm on Junior's forehead and removed the cobwebs over his brain. She dropped the boy and the blonde relentlessly rocketed to his former teacher, with Sakura running close behind him. Sai feinted a blow to the man's right arm. Kakashi pulled his arm back but opened up his side for Junior to drive an elbow. The man grunted and kicked Junior away, leaving him open for Sakura to land a kick to his back. The man spun around with the kick and spat out 4 water needles from his lips at the girl, and Sakura destroyed all 4 with 4 well-timed blows. Sai smashed his fist into Kakashi's unprotected back. The man panted and turned around, kicking the black-haired boy away with a strike to his chin. Junior phased into sight at his side and stabbed his side with his fingers 7 times, ducking a forearm swing that would have snapped off his head and continuing his 7-strike onslaught at the other side of the man's torso, which Kakashi barely managed to counter by tripping the super-focused boy and bringing his heel down to crack the Yandame's son in the upper back. He spat out a mouthful of blood as Sakura cracked her right fist behind his head, swinging his arm at her and knocking her back but allowing Sai to give a shallow slash in the man's abdomen, cutting through the flak jacket and into flesh. He shoved the boy away with a shaky blow to his face, cursing as Sakura slammed her shoulder into the back of his left knee, scooping up the king's brother from the ground and rolling to a stop. She brought him out of his daze again with healing chakra to his head, and the child, once again, ran at Kakashi without hesitation. The man yelped as he tried to get back to his feet, feeling the muscles at the back of his knee throb. He growled and got back to his feet, his Sharingan stubbornly spinning, and deflected Sai's tanto by slapping it aside, grabbing onto the boy's face with a savage claw hold and smashing him into the ground. He spat out more blood as Junior stabbed his back with his fingers, kicking the boy away with a donkey kick but making the mistake of releasing Sai, who flickered away. The group bounced back and forth at the man, systematically bringing him to his knees. The first few times they would mutually allow the copy ninja to hit them to allow a teammate a chance at making a critical strike, repeating it again and again until Kakashi began to seriously lose chakra. The medic swept Kakashi's good leg, cracking his heel in the process, and ran around, allowing Junior to slam a fist into the copy ninja's face. Kakashi panted, his eyes seeing hazy reflections of his former students, hissing and gasping as they lowered his defenses more and more with the very same team attack he taught them. The triple tandem. A fist crashed into his normal eye, and a knee broke against his jaw on the other side of his face. A roundhouse kick nailed his ear, destroying his eardrum, and a backhand collided with his temple, bouncing his brain in his skull. Blurs moved around him, attacking and leaving to give room for another attack, then another and another, none of which showed any mercy. He was too out of breath to wheeze when a sickle slashed through his lower back and another sickle carved a deep groove into his left shoulder before it was violently pulled out, giving room for fiery red fists to pummel his chest, cracking the bone. It all ended with the king's younger brother crossing his sickles around Kakashi's head, the tips just scraping each other, and he pulled his arms apart. The copy ninja's bloody head rolled, and his body slumped forward. Dead. The Red Sickle Bridge. Wave Town. Wave Country. Shizen, hurry up, I want us to be off this country in 10 minutes. Tsunade huffed as she run-walked over the great bridge named after the king's younger brother, carrying 2 large bags in each arm and a bottle of water in her right hand. Shizen panted tiredly behind her, hefting 5 large traveling bags and a small pet carrier with their pet pig, Tauntaun, seated inside. The poor girl puffed and lugged forward as quickly as her tired legs could carry her. They had been running from Konoha for the past 4 hours. The plan was to board a leaving ship that would sail towards an inhabited island Tsunade had won in a poker game to lay low for a while until the global invasion had ended, either with the Yondaime living up to his word and killing the Tsukai King, or the Tsukai King killing the Yondaime. The last Sannin sighed tiredly, marching through the ghostly empty town of Wave. Minato was not going to win, no matter how much he swore he would. Naruto was just too strong. She didn't need to be told that it was the thought-to-be-dead redhead that had interrogated her a few days ago. Common sense would have told her that since Kirigaku was crawling with Tsukai soldiers, Hot Water Country was basically a wasteland with all its natural gas sucked out of the ground and transported back to the kingdom in several tankers, and Fire Country was surrounded by tens of thousands of Tsukai soldiers. There was no possible way on Earth, under it or over it, that she would ever be allowed off the continent to a faraway island she had not visited in over 40 years. Quite frankly, Shizen was surprised that they hadn't been stopped by the scouts and hunters swarming around her home country. She had detected a few and they simply blazed past her to another fire sentry post, unseen and possibly known to her mistress. The young medic had tried to tell her mistress, over and over again, that if Kiri, which was west of Wave, and Hot Water, which was slightly northeast of Wave, were both completely under the control of the Great Flying Kingdom, then Wave would not be out of the question. The country was populated by fishermen and farmers, no fighters, so it would be fairly simple to be invaded. Tsunade refused to listen. Like every other person close to the Yondaime, she could have helped the twins, loved them and protected them. Her guilt had kept her in Konoha to serve as the head medic, and now that Naruto had launched a full-scale invasion on the world, her first instinct was to flee from safety because, without a doubt, Naruto would be coming for her blood. Jiraiya, Danzo, Itachi and Obito, all dead. Their heads nailed onto pikes before the main gate of the Hidden Leaf Village. In her dazed, distracted mind, she still kept a watchful, suspicious eye round, wondering why a bustling town like Wave would be dry of life. A curtain shifted closed, and her heart rate peaked. "Hello, Lady Tsunade," Shizen stammered, stopping abruptly. The woman looked over her shoulder at her, and the black-haired apprentice shakily pointed past the woman. The Sannin was almost hesitant to look. Roughly 20 feet away was single person, a girl with a blank white mask covering her face and donning the Tsukai silver rank. The girl had crimson-red hair that was tied into a short ponytail, standing at ease with her hands behind her back and her chest puffed out. She slowly lifted her right hand up and moved her mask off her face, perching it on the top of her head. The girl's bright purple eyes twinkled gleefully at the blonde Sannin. Naruko! The woman gasped in recognition, her eyes wide with shock and horror, especially as a twisted, toothy smirk crawled onto the cute girl's moon-pale face and her eyes darkened with murderous intent. But you're supposed to be dead? The girl interrupted. I know. Isn't my brother just the best? The woman gulped at the redhead's flippant mention of her godly king brother. She took a few uncertain steps back, urging Shizen behind her and making the girl drop the luggage, backing away slowly. Naruko cocked her head to the side, her smirk widened into a full-blown, horrifying grin that sent violent chills down Tsunade's spine, and her eyes contracted a little. "Say, where are you going in such a rush, Lady Tsunade?" "Nowhere," the woman replied, grinding her teeth to muster up some courage as Naruko leisurely began walking forward with small, slow steps. "Oh, come on, you can tell me," the terrifying girl said in a sweet voice. "I'm good at keeping secrets." She then groaned in frustration as a low voice whispered into her ear from her earbud. "You guys never let me have any fun." Her shoulders slumped, then she gave Tsunade a lopsided smile. "Lord Brother wants me to kill you too. No hard feelings, okay?" Her fists tightened at her sides and 3 long adamantium blades slid out of her knuckles slowly, clicking in place with a smooth schling. She pointed her fists at the 2 women. Her right arm was slightly straight while the left was bent. She also bent her knees with her right foot further forward than the left, like she was ready to lunge at a moment's notice, and all emotion died from her eyes, but her smile glowed on her pale face. "Try and put up a fight, please. I want a good, clean match." It would be such a pain if she killed the Sannin easily. She had to end the fight as quickly as possible so she could go to IWA and intercept the Yondaime before he reached IWA, which would be in about 5 hours if Minato ran at a constant, blurring speed. Just because she had to catch up to her father and help hold him back from IWA, alongside her thousands of comrades, didn't mean she couldn't have fun with the Senju. Besides, she was also supposed to gather Tsunade's DNA to be sent back to the kingdom for research and replication. Her current mission didn't stipulate what condition the Sannin should be in after, but rather emphasized on killing her and retrieving her DNA samples. The monster that resided in her gut, the one she shared with her twin brother, snapped and spat for release. It could only mean one thing: her brother wanted to kill someone at the very same time she did. No doubt Naruto was feeling it as well from her. She lunged forward at Tsunade, and the Sannin was barely able to shove Shizen away in time before she could roll back from a savage slash to her arm. The woman snarled and got to her feet, her fists lifted up. Naruko smirked a little at the sight. Good. If Tsunade Senju was going to go down, then she was going to do down fighting. The last Senju opened her lips and roared as she charged at the adamantium monster. Training Ground 25. Iwagakure no Sado. Earth Country. A long, long time ago, there was once a little red-haired boy and an old white-haired man. The boy's home was being torn apart from the inside by several civil wars and other great ninja villages that invaded them. While the 3 sages fought Hanzo of the Salamander, still moments before they could be dubbed the 3 Sannin, a white-haired Uchiha came upon the crumbled form of a red-haired boy, crying even as he was unconscious under the unforgivingly cold and hard rain. The man's visible Mangekyo Sharingan eye shone in the grim lighting the once great hidden village had found itself, glaring down at the mess of thin limbs and skin. A boy with such great potential. A descendant of the Uzumaki clan. His eyes were able to analyze the child's massive chakra reserve and trace him as far back to the very first Uzumaki he met alongside his former friend Hashirama. The 7th leader of the old clan, a monster to others and a father to the clan named Kabuki. Madara's eyes strayed past Nagato and frowned at the 3 other broken, but still living bodies of who he assumed were the redhead's friends. He felt a boom in the distance where the 3 sages were battling the Kage. He bent down onto his knee and placed his middle and pointer finger on Nagato's head, pushing in a small pulse of chakra into his system to aid his healing. He studied the boy, then looked behind him to where the great battle was occurring, and finally to the fingers still on Nagato's forehead. His fingers snapped back into a fist, and then his pointer and pinky finger shot out in a blur, both pushed hard into the child's eye sockets. The ends of his fingers glowed red and he effortlessly pulled out the child's bright purple eyes. Madara smoothly unsealed a palm-sized canister filled with a thick fluid and 2 floating purple orbs that had black rings winding out from the dot-like pupil. There was a sharp flash, and the eyes were gone. Madara slowly rose, feeling his bones creak and a harsh pain shooting up his back, a warning sign that for a man his age he was not meant to be bending down for too long. He ignored the pain and turned around. "I entrust those eyes to you, Uzumaki child," he said, and disappeared in a spinning vortex of air and energy. His last words echoed in the air as the little red head woke up. "Your chakra will evolve my eyes. Your chakra will evolve my eyes. My eyes." Madara, now as young as when he had first faced Hashirama Senju and decked out in his full armor and his gear, including his battle fan strapped to his back, a tanto on his right hip and several kunai and shurikens sealed into his palms, he looked at the red head before him with narrowed eyes. His body walked forward by itself, out of the coffin he had been resurrected in, and stopped 15 feet away from the red head. There was no one present for several yards except for gold-armored soldiers standing at the very edge of the training ground and 2 platinum-armored soldiers keeping their distance beside the gold soldiers. Madara's highly evolved eyes, probably the strongest pair of Sharingan in history, moved back to the redhead that had brought him back to life, a mere child that wore a full-body black obsidian armor that covered his body and formed his metal boots and his armored hands. Smooth and comfortable, the cursed armor looked like it was simply another layer of skin for the child, a thin, unbreakable layer of skin. The child also had on black ninja-grade pants with 2 front pockets and 2 back pockets, from what he could guess, a blood-red shirt with words Sky King written diagonally across his chest in gold letters, and finally an overcoat that reached the boy's ankles. The child had his hands stuffed in the pockets of his coat and was leaning back, regarding the man with lazy eyes. "Eyes? My eyes?" The rinnegan in the boy's eyes were cold black with crimson rings. Madara wanted to smirk at being right that to have picked Nagato, but he didn't because he knew he was wrong. 10 minutes of stifling silence, with thick gray-black clouds slowly spinning over the training ground, bubbling up a small storm, and the air frigid cold, enough to make those standing guard at the edge to activate the heaters in their armor. The boy looked back at him, the image of a true conqueror, and allowed the old ninja to speak. "Who are you?" "My name is Naruto." "You are not Nagato." The man had been following the red-head child for a while before he could reach the ultimate conclusion that Nagato was indeed in Uzumaki. "Those are not my eyes. I am not Nagato," Naruto replied easily, freeing a bit more control of the man to allow Madara to approach him. The 2 powerhouses stood in place. "But he and Konan are valuable additions to my forces. And no," he smiled wanly and tilted his head to the side. "These are not your eyes, they are mine." As the last word flowed out of his mouth, the storm clouds above them crackled with lightning. Madara did not even flinch. "You are an Uzumaki?" "I have Uzumaki blood in me," Naruto said, not necessarily denying his mother's clan but at the same time not saying he is part of the clan. "Is Nagato an Uzumaki?" He was almost hesitant to ask. His face did not betray any anxiety or insecurity, but his hands clenched and his crossed arms tightened. Naruto nodded. "He is Uzumaki." The king then straightened up and his eyes became serious. "I initially intended to simply rip out your soul and steal your memories, but truth is, I've always wanted to kill a legend." Oanoki, Danzo, and Orochimaru might have been legends before they were crushed at Naruto's hands, but they were not the kind of legends Naruto was talking about. Madara was so infamous and powerful that myths and stories were created by people to further raise his status from a simple man to that of a god. Destroying an entire hidden village in one swipe. Summoning demons to fight for him. Killing a demon king with his bare hands. Naruto knew that not all of those stories were true, but he also knew that Madara was no simple man. The king could feel the waves of oppressive energy resonating from the man's body, enough to make the ground groan and creak just to keep up his weight and to partition the sky where the clouds rumbled into 2. Dark red thunder clouds warped above Naruto, and dark blue clouds spiraled over Madara. Naruto finally released full hold over the Uchiha, not releasing him totally from his hold but allowing the man to move at his own will and not at Naruto's command. The 2 stared off, their powerful chakra surrounding them slowly and pushing and shoving the other, like 2 snapping dragons, one red and the other blue, wrestling for dominance. The air became charged with tension as Madara glared at the boy, still with his arms crossed and his back straight, looking down at the king while Naruto kept his hands in his pockets and his back also straight, unflinchingly meeting a stare that would sooner kill any other man. "I've always wanted to kill a god," Madara replied. A sinister smirk crawled its way up his face and his eternal Mangekyo Sharingan began spinning. The two battling chakra tussled relentlessly, creating a roaring storm that, if left unchecked, would tear the entire hidden village apart. "I've always," Madara began again, "wanted to kill." A demonic beast began growing in the chests of both monstrous ninjas. "A god! So it seems," Naruto said, his calm smile carrying over the violent war of chakra going on between them, divided by a thick line just about 7.5 feet from the other. "If I win, I get your soul. And if I win, I get your eyes." Naruto's fists tightened in his coat pockets, tight enough to make his knuckles pop and turn white. The king felt an eager, excited shudder run up and down his body, but he held it down masterfully, barely controlling his face into a wide-eyed, toothy grin. A crazed expression that Madara also wore, albeit with a murderous, maniacal hint to it. The Uchiha simply wanted Naruto's eyes, but Naruto, he wanted to tear Madara apart. "Deal." The words came easily, and the older ninja heard it clearly. He dropped his hands to his sides, and at the same time Naruto removed his hands from his pockets and shrugged off his overcoat. The piece of clothing was pushed away by the wind towards Karen, and the medic caught it. The king steadied his hands to his sides, flexing them in preparation. "Do not hold back. I want you to give me all you've got. You will regret those words soon, boy." The two fighters, both of which were so highly revered that they might as well be gods, got into their fighting positions in one smooth motion. Madara shot to Naruto. The ground cracked and opened up as he blasted to the boy, and Naruto hurtled to Madara, a deep crater left at where he formerly stood. Two faint balls of light, one red and the other blue. No human eye could keep track of them as they ran to meet each other, and when they did meet, the sky above the entire training ground collapsed. Chapter 19. Devastation. "Fall back!" Indra roared, and the soldiers standing around the training ground rushed away as the sky exploded downwards and the ground gave out slightly, blasting rocks and heavy air outwards. The man stabbed the head cleaver into the ground to stay in place, slowly sliding back as the wind became stronger. Even as he focused chakra to his feet, he was still being pushed back by the tremendous force of wind and the clash of chakra. Karen used her forearm to shade her eyes, her other hand thrown behind her, as she clenched the king's overcoat with all she had. She leaned forward towards the wind as another wave of it pulsed outwards, like a stampede of bulls. The head medic squinted her eyes and tried to cut through the thin dust at the center of the training ground where the king and the Uchiha were battling. Saibugu, stubbornly still recording, retreated with the platinum ranks and hid behind a gold and red, erected Fuinjutsu's shield on the opposite side of the Wagakure. Madara thrust his palm to Naruto's chest, and the king ducked the blow, sliding under the still outstretched arm with blurring speed and swinging his right leg to the back of the Uchiha's knee. Madara swept his leg back in time and flipped over the king as a savage claw tore towards his abdomen. Naruto continued his onslaught, shooting jabs after the Uchiha as the latter leaped back, flashing after the man stubbornly. Rapid blinks of red light doggedly following quick flashes of blue light as the latter hastily tried to retreat from the former. The evolved Sharingan in the man's eyes strained to keep up, only seeing a split second ahead of time before a blow. He suddenly stopped backtracking and shifted his head to the side from a devastating blow, grabbing the arm with his right hand and guiding it on its path past his head as his right knee shot up, driving deep into Naruto's stomach. A gasp escaped the king's mouth at the counter, and he swiftly wrapped his right arm, the arm Madara guided past his head, around Madara's neck from behind. There was a blinding flash of light, and the king roared as he yanked the Uchiha back, smashing the older ninja's head straight into the ground, A/N, DDT. Naruto quickly got back to his feet and stepped back, briefly admiring his work as the Uchiha stuck out of the ground like a nail, before he spat out a curse as the man flickered out of sight in a blaze of speed. The Uchiha appeared behind Naruto, stabbing forward with a kunai to his opponent's neck, but Naruto flipped forward onto his hands, kicking the knife out of the ninja's hand with his heel in the process, and he melted out of sight. The undead Uchiha narrowed his eyes and looked around, the area deathly silent as he failed to see the Rinnegan king. His eternal Mangekyo spun frantically and he caught a flash at the corner of his right eye, shifting back a step and slapping aside a kick to his neck. Naruto blazed out of sight again and appeared on Madara's other side with a punch to his chest. The man ducked under the blow, and his right hand shot up to attack Naruto's diaphragm, but the king again disappeared with blinding speed. The man frowned and breathed out, slapped down 2 blows and countered with an elbow. Naruto bent back from the attack and jammed his fist into the Uchiha's side, adding 5 more fists into his stomach before the man bellowed and bashed his head into Naruto's. There was a spine-chilling crack and the king found his face in the solid ground, huffing when a foot slammed into his back and blasted him away. The sky rumbled after the blow and more chakra blasted outwards, forcing the loyal platinum ranks to retreat as well to a safer distance before they could be shredded to pieces by the combination of dangerous chakra. Naruto rolled on his side as Madara's chakra relentlessly pushed him away, roaring with murderous intent. Finally he flipped onto his feet and skimmed over the ground with a gust of wind on a transparent air board, barely avoiding a ball of fire. The king leaped over another ball of molten fire and landed with a crunch on his wind board, smoothly sailing under a ball and kicked the board up, spinning in a circle and shooting it to Madara. The wind board connected with the man's outstretched hands. Naruto wasted no time clapping his hands together and flashing through 3 hand seals. Madara saw the seals and followed with 2 different hand seals. Naruto's voice was low and his Rinnegan pulsed with power. Lightning release, death of the lightning kraken. Wind release, exiled dragon lord. A shrill whistle shrieked as an 8-armed creature made out of red lightning crackled into sight around Naruto. It had 2 beady black eyes and a long, pointed, squid-like head. It screamed to the heavens, a sound that tore the ground apart even more, and it rocketed to the Uchiha, who sent back a pure white, wispy dragon made out wind. Thump! The 2 opposing chakra nature attacks slammed against the other in an earth-shattering tussle of sharp wind teeth and crackling lightning tentacles, snapping and swiping at each other. Naruto crossed his forearms in front of his face as the wind shredded half of his shirt, from his right shoulder to the bottom of his left side, while Madara only lost his left shoulder plate, also holding his arms to his face. The man looked over his arms and his eyes widened as he saw Naruto finish off another set of hand seals. Wind and earth release, combination jutsu, continental axis shift. How the hell? The man exclaimed as Naruto bent his knees, holding the rat hand seals, and punched his obsidian-armored fists into the ground. Thick veins bulged from Naruto's neck, and he gave a great heave as his legs slid backwards. The ground trembled violently, even as the 2 chakra monsters still fought, and Madara stumbled back as the entire hidden village, the buildings, the people, the air and especially the earth, shifted towards Naruto. The man, who was formerly hundreds of yards away, suddenly found his face in Naruto's fist. Garg! He grunted as his head caved in, and he shot back to where he formerly stood. The wind and earth jutsu cancelled, and the village hopped back in place. Madara used his momentum to roll back, reversing onto his feet and crossing his forearms as Naruto followed after him with a roundhouse kick. A blue skeletal rib appeared around him and summarily shattered as Naruto's foot met it. The man forced down his morbid horror as he reached forward. A blue skeletal arm warped into sight and grabbed Naruto. Madara snarled as he turned Naruto upside down. The redhead looked at the man with wide, stunned eyes that he had been caught, and stabbed him into the ground head first. The man didn't stop there. Another blue arm appeared close to the first arm, dug its massive fingers into the ground, tore out a block of earth and brought it down on Naruto's feet, driving him further into the ground. Thud! Boom! Thud! Boom! The earth spider webbed with each bash and Naruto went further into the ground. The undead Uchiha bashed the block down onto Naruto's feet and it finally broke apart, and he panted, white gust of air escaping his mouth as his Sharingan stayed fixed on Naruto's unmoving body. He gaped when Naruto's hands, which were at his sides, opened and he slapped his hands into a dragon hand sign. Earth release, minor shockwave. His voice muffled. The ground cracked outwards from Naruto, and Madara hastily flipped through seals. Wood release trees erupted from the ground around Naruto, and converged in towards him, dispelling the two other warring chakra constructs. Naruto got his feet back onto the ground and his head snapped up when he sensed multiple massive throbs of energy around him. He leaped away as a chakra-draining tree lashed at him, just missing his legs, and two more trees caught the king, not wasting even a second by draining his chakra. The king struggled as he felt his chakra forcefully leave him, then his Rinnegan flashed to Madara and he hissed. Universal pull. The Uchiha was savagely ripped out of his protective Susanoo and blazed towards Naruto. There were two puffs of smoke on the branches Naruto was being held in, and two identical shadow clones waved away the smoke. One of the clones hopped towards the other clone and transformed into a demon wind shuriken, and the receiving clone hurled it at Madara as Naruto growled. Almighty push! The wood-release trees groaned pitifully as Naruto exploded out of their grip, also at the same time making the wind shuriken wear to the incoming Madara even faster. The Rinnegan King blurred out of sight and the demon wind shuriken clattered to the ground where he formerly stood. The Uchiha coughed out blood as Naruto switched and crashed his knee into his chest, shattering his armor and burning off his shirt in a destructive plume of fire. The ground trembled as the two landed, Madara with his back and Naruto with his feet on the man's chest. The king jumped back as the Uchiha exploded, narrowing his eyes when the clone simply went up in blinding white light and a loud pop, a flash bang. His right arm blocked the battle fan before he was even aware of it. There was a crick, and the Rinnegan King's eyes enlarged like dinner plates when he saw his unbreakable, cursed obsidian armor fracture. He slapped away a kick and lifted his leg when the same leg came back for a sweep. He lifted his other arm to block the fan again, and cursed as the armor broke off his arm. He looked at the Uchiha and snarled. His fists blazed forward with brutal accuracy, and they were all deflected by the flat side of the fan, moving up and down the Uchiha's body to block each precise blow. Clink, 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 clink. On, and the armor on Naruto's fists broke off as he blasted and slammed punches to Madara but were blocked by the gunbai. Thick white smoke began pouring off Naruto's hands as he stubbornly kept up the onslaught, following Madara as the man's feet shuffled back despite the chakra he used to stay in place. Arag! The king bellowed and his arms caught fire, his punches getting faster and faster, and the guard the Uchiha put up beginning to show signs of breaking. Toxic red fire, from his hands to his elbows, shrouded his hands and black smoke billowed from them, cracking and crushing the fan until Madara grated and slammed his foot into Naruto's chest in a destructive Spartan kick. As the king rolled back from the kick, his body caught fire. His back skidded to a stop in the ground and he got back to his feet, glaring at Madara, who stood, gasping for air after the impossibly fast attack of fists. Naruto was now covered with golden-orange Kyuubi chakra. Red lines went down his arms, joined together on his chest and went around in a circle around concentric red circles on his belly, and then spreading out to each leg to his toes. Fire crackled on his back and the words King of the Sky scrawled on. His complete Kyuubi cloak fully set in as his whisker marks thickened and his crimson-red hair waved in the wind, now on fire as well. A blue, fully formed Susanoo fist tunneled through the ground towards the former Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Naruto's face remained neutral and he cocked his head to the side, watching the attack approach with his godly eyes, then he slammed his fists together and a fiery fox's maw roared out before him, biting down on the approaching hand and yanking its head back, ripping it right out of the blue Susanoo's socket. The fox head lifted up and snarled at Madara, its body formed under it, and Naruto levitated safely in its radiant head. The fox gave a feral growl and the black markings Naruto had copied onto its body. Its 9 tails swayed behind it as it crouched on the ground in a guarded lunge-ready position. Madara spat out a curse as thick black smoke poured out of its deadly maw and it opened its mouth, pointing it at him as a dangerous light began glowing deep in its throat. Fuck! A tornado of chakra covered the shirtless Uchiha, and the eyes of the Hashirama head on his chest briefly flashed red. A glowing blue Susanoo warped around the undead man, from skeleton to full, standing man that towered over the crouched nine-tailed beast construct. Would release trees added to its armor, and the Susanoo spread out its arm before it as Naruto's Kyuubi began shooting out evil, black-tailed beast balls. A celestial white shield spiraled into sight, and the balls smashed into it. Multiple-tailed beast balls. Boom! 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 10 more hit the shield and the Susanoo fought to stay in place. 2 more arms slithered out from its original 2 and a celestial bow and arrow popped into their hands. Amaterasu! The blue Susanoo blasted back 6 flaming black arrows. Naruto cut off his relentless attack and rolled aside, crushing several training grounds at once, and the Kyuubi construct snarled, smoke floated out of its jaws. Madara continued shooting arrows of unquenchable fire as the great beast ran around his Susanoo. Multiple shadow clone technique! Naruto echoed under his breath, and the blue Susanoo was quickly surrounded by 6 other clones, all of which converged around the Susanoo without delay. As the massive chakra construct clones engaged the undead Uchiha and Taijutsu, Naruto clapped his hand together once, and then he crossed his forearms over his face, forming a sharp X. The Kyuubi cloak over his body shuddered, fluttered in the wind and changed from red to black. The black linings and symbols on his body changed to toxic red. His red hair stayed red and his skin remained pale white, marred only by the black whisker marks on his cheeks. But the rest his body turned black with mutated chakra. Naruto's Rinnegan quivered as he transformed, and the Rinnegan finally mirrored in the eyes of the massive fox. A/N, basically, it's canon Naruto in his Sage of Six Paths Kyuubi chakra mode, but without his orange jacket. The colors on Kyuubi are reversed, red lines, markings, on his body, and the Kyuubi has the Rinnegan. Nine-tailed technique, inversion mode, demon Rinnegan Kitsune. The clones disappeared and the black fox construct flashed to the stunned Uchiha, feinting a blow to its chest but blinking out of sight and then driving 4 fingers into the back of the Susanoo's neck. The Uchiha's construct broke apart from the neck and crackled with black fox fire as it began coming apart. Naruto clambered out of the fox's head and dove down to Madara, appearing in the blink of an eye and with a trail of black fire flowing from his inverted Kyuubi cloak. It was like Naruto had stepped up his fight. Madara couldn't predict anything. Naruto bashed a right and left hook to his opponent's face, 1 for each cheek, slid under a clumsy strike and rolled forward in the air, cracking his heel into the top of the man's head, bringing him to the ground in a flash of dangerous black fire and crimson red lightning. Madara gasped out blood as his back met the unforgiving ground, and he choked out more as Naruto bolted down from the sky in a crack of electricity, crashing his feet into his chest with a rumble of black chakra. The king's Rinnegan throbbed as he swiftly jumped back 3 feet away from Madara in the deep, wide crater his double stomp had created, and his chest cracked open, shooting out roughly 20 red-tipped missiles into the helpless man's face as he stood in a somewhat safe distance. He squinted his eyes to look through the rapid explosion of light and fire he was causing with each red-tipped warhead coming out of his chest. The fiery red head held the ram, and the deafening blaze of inferno that was the Kyuubi construct thundered to the sky, and its whole body shrank into a ball about the same size as half of the training ground. The king raised his right hand, cutting off the seal, and he swept it down to the panting mess of burnt limbs below him as he hopped away. Planetary devastation! Nine-tailed beast moon! The glowing black moon screamed down to the man, and Naruto, who stood more than a few kilometers away, slammed his hands to the ground. Earth and wind walls erected out of the ground to encase the resulting thud of energy and fire from destroying the entire village. Black smoke washed away from the crash site, and Naruto strained to see into it, only feeling a weak thump of chakra from inside as the moon dug deeper and deeper into the ground, scorching the Uchiha trapped under it with Kyuubi chakra and mutated Uzumaki chakra. Sweltering heat and an almost unbearable gravitational pressure arrived half a minute after the black fox moon crash landed into the man, and kept going down, baking the environment and setting the last few foliage that remained intact on fire. the only thing preventing the black moon from squishing Iwa into the ground with its large field of gravitational pressure and burning what was left was the wind and earth barrier the Rinnegan king stubbornly held up, gritting his teeth as his broken armor tried to regulate the temperature and pressure around him alongside his Deva and Preta path. Deva because of the crack in gravity caused by the fox moon falling down from the sky, and the Preta path because it was the path that controlled chakra going in and out of Naruto's inverted QB form. There was a big shudder and the earth groaned pitifully, weakly putting up resistance as the moon burned deeper into the ground with Madara still under it. Naruto could feel his armor begin to melt off his torso. Thankfully his pants were safe from being burned off his body from the wind funneling around him. The only reason he could give for his indestructible armor melting and his ninja pants not, despite the wind, was that the gunbai had somehow weakened his armor and destabilized the seals that kept it fully operational. A wicked smirk etched onto his face as he sealed up the crack in gravity over the training ground with his Deva path, also stopping the black fox moon from burning any deeper into the earth. The mixture of QB and mutated chakra would continue to burn until it reached the center of the earth. It worked almost the same way as what he read the Amaterasu did, except the black flames of the Sharingan could burn for 7 days and 7 nights. He honestly didn't know how long his inverted chakra would burn for, but the effects were just as bad on its target. Don't stop swinging until the enemy stops moving. That was one of the most important rules every Tsukai soldier had to abide by, and Naruto wouldn't be leading by example if he didn't also live by that rule. Madara had been defeated as soon as the king activated his demon Rinnegan Kitsune form. The king began a steady jog back to the crash site, where the ball of fire burned merrily. The demon Rinnegan Kitsune was the technique Naruto mentally finished forming after he witnessed Itachi's Susanoo, although admittedly he had been researching and planning since his time in Demon Country 6 years ago. It made use of manifesting his QB chakra as it was, mixing in his normal chakra as well as the mutated, nature-imbued chakra in his body and channeling his Preta and outer path and performing a technique called inversion, where he changed the flow of chakra from going out of his body, as it normally did when a person was using a jutsu or fighting, to flow inside in a constant loop. Like his body was a vortex that eternally sucked in chakra from the environment, only looping it outwards after it had passed through all of his major tenketsu. This in turn changed his mutated chakra from red to black. The effect on those near him was that their chakra would begin getting sucked in, only restricting those that were either out of range or those Naruto did not want to take chakra from. It seems I overdid it. The redhead winced. He looked around with his Rinnegan, grimacing at the utter chaos he had caused during his fight with the undead Uchiha. Random explosions from the ground. Nearly half of the hidden village was flattened and the sky was pelting down small balls of fire from dark red clouds, which began to taper to a stop after a few minutes. He shrugged off his concern and swept his hands forward to the fallen moon. The massive rock crumbled away into dust, scattering into ash and flowing smoothly into Naruto's black chakra-coated body. He slid down into the giant crater his last jutsu had created and stopped near the undead man's body. The impure world resurrection jutsu held strong, seeing as it was still Naruto sustaining it, but the king had already passed on bodily control as well as Madara's chakra back to the Uchiha at the start of the fight. It was why the man was dead tired and out of chakra. Flakes of his skin began chipping off and disintegrating into dust, and as Naruto bent down on his knee and looked at Madara, he was genuinely impressed that the man was still able to sustain his eternal Mangekyo despite how critically low his chakra was. It was testament to how strong the Uchiha's chakra was. Naruto scoffed as his senses throbbed, catching hold of the hand that went straight to his right eye. "You're the second Uchiha to try that stunt." Madara bared his teeth to suppress the pained grunt as the black fire on Naruto's hand burned his own to a crisp, right down to his elbow. "I didn't think you were this strong." The king shrugged and looked down to his torso, at the cracked obsidian armor that was perfectly hidden underneath the inverted QB cloak. Only few people would admit that aloud. He smirked sharply and placed his right hand on the Uchiha's head. "This battle has served its purpose." The man simply looked up at the hand on his head, then back to Naruto. "What purpose?" The flaming redhead grinned evilly and muttered, "Soul Eater." 30 minutes after Naruto's battle with Madara. Kokuchisusuk Town, southeastern border town of Earth and Grass countries. The Counter Konoha Division. The 11th rank Sukai Guard campsite. Earth Country. Silver rank Naruko. The wistful voice of Yuakuso said as 10 squads of hunter ninjas landed from the trees southeast of Earth from Grass Country, and the girls separated from her appointed squad and marched to the head of the espionage and infiltration division, while the rest of the hunters entered the assembled soldiers standing just outside of the Earth Country's border. There was a sea of soldiers rushing through the ranks in preparation of the force of Konoha ninjas that was led by the Yondaime, scheduled to arrive in 3 hours. The current 11th rank guard stationed in the border town was a force of over 5,000 gold, silver and bronze rank soldiers that closely served the king, whether in his palace or on a mission. They were a specially selected number that had shown strength close enough to a platinum rank, or any subsequent higher rank, and even though the 11th rank was not an official rank, it was seen as the last step a gold rank took before he or she was qualified enough to be platinum rank, which in turn was a rank for division heads. There were 3 11th ranks of varying numbers in the kingdom: gold, silver, and bronze. Any silver or bronze rank that was skilled enough to join their respective 11th ranks was pretty much already seen as promoted, given that they still had to improve in skill and prove their rank. It was a known fact that all of the king's grounder spies and Sukai spies on the ground were 11th rank. The king's twin sister was still in the observation stage on whether or not she should be in the 11th, but Naruto had explicitly given orders that she be present. She stopped before the man and saluted. "Sir?" Yu motioned for her to follow him as he walked through Intelligence Solitaire standing at attention, listening to the orders being barked by a gold rank intelligence soldier. "Your younger brother and his teammates returned a few hours ago with the body of Kakashi Hatake." The girl just barely controlled her face from snarling. She swallowed thickly, marching behind the platinum rank, and muttered, "That's great news, sir." The man looked over his shoulder and smiled warmly. "Your division head, Mora, also told me that you performed excellently in your last mission." This time the girl couldn't suppress the proud smile from spreading on her face as pride flowed through her body. "It's not every day you get to kill a Sannin. Congratulations." "Thank you, sir. Do you want me to recommend a promotion to the 11th rank to the king?" "Mora wants to also do the same." Jiraiya the Toad Sage was killed by a platinum rank, Satoshi Todoroki of Rescue and Support, so if a silver rank that had just joined the army a day ago was able to do the same, albeit with another Sannin, then it was cause for praise. "I have no doubt Lord Naruto would promote you." "I appreciate it, sir, I really do, but I want to remain where I am until I've learned about all it takes to be a soldier, the rules, protocols, codes, and skills." "It takes maturity to say that," the man said and stopped before a command tent standing in the place of the main gate leading into the country. You turned around and nodded to her. "I will make sure Mora records your accomplishment, and I will also ensure you get a pay raise. Your work cannot go unrewarded." The girl bowed gratefully. "I'm grateful, sir." You nodded again, and jetting his left thumb over his shoulder to the tent. "Lord Naruto has requested you rest in here and await his arrival. Some of the others will serve as my lord's full frontal. Those that would stand at attention and wait in their number for the Konoha ninjas to arrive." "Did he say why he wants me to stay back?" "He wants you to save your strength for your father." The girl saluted and the platinum rank walked away to attend to another function. As a division head, he was aware that the invasion of Iron Country was pushed ahead of the time Naruto had wanted, but so far the samurais had been completely suppressed, although a large chunk of the samurai of the country had been killed in the skirmish. Nagato had reported this success to Karen, seeing as the connection to Naruto was cut off by the transponder because "My Lord Naruto is currently occupied." The only country that was not stomped over was Fire Country. No matter how much their father made him push his military campaigns forward, their initial plan of invading Fire Country last would stand. The girl felt her shoulders lower as energy left her body. She and her squad had been running from Wave to Earth Country for 2 hours straight, making use of their flight seals every once in a while with long bursts of wind speed. The seals had cut down their time by hours, making the large semicircular detour around the speeding force of Konoha ninjas shorter than it was meant to be. At the moment Minato was still in fire country, but he was dangerously close to grass and finally to Iwa. The general order was for the soldiers to keep the yondaime and his ninjas in grass country until Naruto arrived. They were not to attack Minato Namikaze, only keep him back in grass. The 16-year-old mutant girl pushed through the flaps with her eyes closed and sighed, rolling his sore shoulders and cracking her neck. Then she opened her eyes. Her eyes flashed from soft purple to vulpine red and her fingernails elongated. "You!" she hissed as her eyes fell on Junior, standing before her in bronze rank armor and the standard Tsukai combat uniform for lower ranks of a short-sleeved blue shirt and black pants. His weapons were lying on a wooden desk of the king with the map of the continent under it. The boy stood in place as his older sister began stomping towards him. His eyes glazed over and drooped to the floor. "Silver rank Naruko." The soft voice of Magi cut through the haze of rage in Naruko's mind. The redhead looked to the head of Fuinjutsu, sitting in the center of the large command table with her legs crossed. The green-haired girl shook her head and ordered, "Stand down." The redhead acknowledged the younger girl's platinum rank armor and the white armband that had the kanji for Fuinjutsu written in gold ink, but still blubbered. "But dash! I said stand down." Naruko's lips twitched down, and her nails slid back with a click. Her eyes changed back to purple, and she looked to the ground. "Yes, sir." The girl screwed her lips aside and tried her best to overlook how much the red-haired girl before her looked like her king. The two were nearly identical, and it pained the gentle head of division to say, "My lord Naruto wanted you to meet your brother." She glared at Naruko when her head snapped up to argue, silencing her. "Junior and his team." She motioned over her shoulder to the two silver ranks standing behind her. "Returned from a very dangerous assassination mission, sanctioned by your brother." Naruko ground her teeth and Junior fought the shaky frown that wanted to come to his face, squeezing his lips as his blue eyes shook. "It was a test to see where his loyalties truly lie. Do you want to know the mission?" Magi asked, but Naruko remained silent. The mint-haired girl barked, "Do you want to know the mission?" "Yes, sir." He was to kill his former sensei, Kakashi Hatake, with the help of his team. The girl stopped grinding her teeth and slowly looked up at her younger brother, who couldn't meet her gaze. She felt a thud in her chest when a tear slid down the boy's pale cheek. "What?" She knew Kakashi. The masked man had made it a point to avoid the twins when they were still in Konoha, but when they did see him, albeit accidentally, the copy ninja was sleeping in a tree. He didn't come off as a teaching kind, however. After hearing that Junior's former teacher was this same man, it dawned on her that the 13-year-old boy had to kill the person that had taught him. Naruko was an Uzumaki, Naruto was an Uzumaki, and Junior was most definitely an Uzumaki. Anyone that showed them even a small ounce of love or attention was part of their family, and this attention included actively training them to be the best they could possibly be. The whole clan was built on a foundation of loyalty, love, kenjutsu, fuinjutsu, and most of all family. Minato Jr. was made to kill his family to prove his loyalty. Junior here simply wanted to be part of the Tsukai family. He always had the option of leaving as soon as he got his mission, but he willingly chose to kill his family because, deep down, he always wanted to know what real love felt like. Magi said. She crossed her arms. His life in Konoha was not good, and Lord Naruto saw this. He gave him friends and he protected him even though Junior was not aware of it. Sasori of the Red Sands, Sai and Sakura, they all looked out for him. Lord Naruto looked over his hatred for his father to look after his brother. Naruko's fingers clenched and unclenched as she struggled to hold her emotions in. "I didn't know. Lord Naruto wants you to meet Junior, and if you choose to keep on blaming him for looking like your father, then that's fine." Magi hopped off the table and left the tent, waving for Sai and Sakura to follow her. There was silence in the tent. Junior still looked away and Naruko looked at her brother, her hands still twitching. She breathed out through her nose and her shoulders stiffened when the 13-year-old boy spoke. "I'm sorry for what father did to you and Lord Brother." Naruko felt her lips tighten and her hands close into fists. The 16-year-old girl shook her head. Don't be. Her hands opened and she pursed her lips, flashing a quick smile at her younger brother. It's not your fault. The boy saw hope in her slowly relaxing posture, and he took a hesitant step to her, clasping his fingers in front of his chest. Lord Brother said, he said that I should change my name dash. Don't. Junior tilted his head to the side and furrowed his eyebrows. Why? He said he didn't like my name. His mood took a small dip when he also remembered that he not only bore his father's name, but also his face. It's your name, not father's name, the girl said with a resigned sigh. She took a few steps to her brother and lifted her hand, briefly holding it over the shorter boy's shoulder before she clasped them down, smiling a little at him. You're not father. The young boy felt a tremendous wave of emotions wash over him. His shoulders shook and his eyes filled up with tears. He dipped his head down and bowed. Thank you? Her eyes became heavy and she gently squeezed her brother's shoulder. A real smile bloomed on her face and she closed her eyes. No worries, kid. Junior bobbed his head and bowed again. Naruko opened her eyes and looked over his uniform, smirking at him with mild pride. Congrats on your rank. The blonde boy happily smiled at his older sister, a first real smile in years, and he excitedly hopped under her hand, making the girl laugh softly under her breath. Lord Brother said that I didn't need to write an exam anymore because Lady Gamatomo, head of Fuinjutsu, recommended I have silver. Then why bronze? It was the lowest I could bargain for. I want to work my way up the ranks until I'm worthy to stand beside Lord Brother. The redhead was surprised by her brother's declaration. Looking into his resolute blue eyes and his confident posture, she found herself reflected right back. The girl placed her hand on her brother's head and ruffled his hair. The wide smile shone cheerfully on her face. I said the exact same thing to Naruto. Really? He looked up at her with large, eager eyes. The girl nodded. Yup. Naruto didn't think I should be in his army, but I still needed to prove my worth. She smirked proudly at him and said, We have Uzumaki blood running in our veins. We don't take handouts. Right. Neither of them claimed to be in the dead Fuinjutsu clan, merely associating with them by the heritage their mother had passed on to them. Her eyes trailed across the room and ended on the weapons lying on Naruto's desk. The girl whistled, impressed, and walked over to them. Dual kama. Sickles. The two siblings idly conversed about their favorite weapons while the tent flap closed, the king of the kingdom leaving to give the two some privacy to bond while he went to organize his army in preparation for the fight with the Konoha ninjas. A smile danced on his lips when he heard a light laugh float out from the tent. His ears picked up Junior telling Naruko that he couldn't pick up Zabuza Momochi's head cleaver during Team 7's fight in Wave against Gato and his men. Naruto knew, he felt, that Naruko's affection for their younger brother was very much forced, but he also had a feeling that one day the girl would honestly learn to love her brother. The good thing was that she was taking after her twins' example and not blaming Junior for what their father did to them. And she was also trying her best to reach over to the young blonde with an open hand and not a fist. It was unfortunate, to him, that both of his siblings willingly joined the Tsukai army, but if it made them happy then he wouldn't stand in their way. Patch me over to Division Head Nirvana of the Invention Division. Patching you over, King Naruto. Naruto hummed and stopped walked when he was out of earshot from his siblings. Fuinjutsu gold-rank soldiers of the king's personal guard instinctively swarmed around him in their ranks and stood at attention. The Rinnegan king smiled appreciatively, and accepted the salute of Magi, the head of Fuinjutsu, as she dispersed her soldiers. Nirvana here, sir. The rainbow-haired girl was sitting on a tree stump in Iron Country's capital with her right boot on her lap and a screwdriver fizzing away as she tapped and touched her wind fan-powered boot against the commonly used flight seal-powered boot. Inventors made it a point to use their inventions as their badge of honor. Naruto huffed and picked at his destroyed armor and his shredded red shirt, wondering why he hadn't called it in after his fight with Madara a few minutes ago. At that moment the only thing covering his almost bare torso was the black overcoat he had over his shoulders. Send over replacement armor for me, This one is broken. The girl gasped and her mouth dropped open, almost also dropping her metal boot. Madara broke your armor? Well, his gunbai did, Naruto said as he cast a quick look at the dead Uchiha's weapon strapped onto his back. I plan on sending it to Indra and Hamato. Frontline and intelligence and interrogation respectively. For analysis. It takes a strong weapon to be able to break cursed obsidian, Nirvana idly remarked as she waved for a gold-rank inventor to begin taking census of the remaining samurai. She hopped onto her feet and slipped her boot on. I'll fly to Demon Country immediately to make you a new one. It will be with you in an hour. Squad 1 of the inventors assembled around their division head and followed after her as she took to the sky with her wide, fan-propelled boots. 2 scouts and 3 rescuers took this as their cue to trail after them. A plain wooden seat was placed behind him and he nodded in appreciation to the bronze rank, speaking to the division head in his ear as well as he huffed tiredly into the seat and watched the sea of soldiers march into position. Thank you. 10 minutes of flying later. The Cave of Dark Secrets, base of the Kurooni cult. The Demon Lord Mountain. Demon Country. Large platinum boots smash landed surprisingly silent before the mouth of the ornately decorated cave mouth. There were 10 muffled thumps behind her as her squad and the additional soldiers dropped behind her. The mouth of the cave was a large half-oval with ancient runes pulsing black and green on the corners, increasing in brightness as the Sukai soldiers arrived. There was only one place cursed obsidian could be found in the entire continent, and that was inside the cave they were assembled before. Demon Country was not safe from invasion. The country was already successfully taken over, but the mountain the teen and her squad stood on was mostly left alone at their king's order. The last time Naruto had been to the cave, alone, was on his solo shadow campaign on the ground. The reason he ordered for the mountain to be left alone was because of the cursed obsidian that lined the inside of the cave, the only opening and exit from the mountain. Cursed obsidian, the strongest metal in the world, cursed anyone that touched it to die and his or her soul sent straight to hell when it was touched. Naruto's saving grace from touching the metal was that his eyes gave him the power to overcome death itself. And like every expedition he had been on, and with the knowledge and experience he gathered he sent it back to his home to capitalize on. The rainbow-haired teen squinted her eyes and a pair of orange goggles fizzled into sight over her eyes. The woman scanned the ground for traps with her special goggles and waved over her shoulder for the scouts to lead the way into the headquarters of the Kurooni cult. Activate anti-resonance shields, she murmured, and the scouts slammed their right fists on their left chests. Their gold rank armor turned completely white. Nirvana followed closely behind them, her armor white as well as her inventor squad. This place gives me the creeps. Keep your eyes open and your guards up, guys. There was a scientific explanation to most mysteries that plagued the world. Cursed obsidian was one of those mysteries, but a full scientific explanation had not been found. Naruto had discovered that the black metal saturated in the back wall of the cave resonated dark energy, or dark release, every second, and when a person that was not immune to dark release or even had dark release as a bloodline was to come anywhere near the source of the cursed metal, they would be forcibly tempted to touch the metal. This would result in instant death. Anti-resonance shields was a combination of both fuinjutsu and engineering from the inventor's division that countered the constant, subtle vibration of black energy in the air with an equally constant counter of light energy, of which was an almost perfect replica of the real light release. The downside of using a replica of light energy was that time was limited for those that ventured inside the cave. Naruto wore this cursed metal as a sign of his kingship, his mastery over the forces of life and death, and also as his personal armor. Those he touched were not killed simply because the armor had recognized his power over life and death, over creation and destruction. Nirvana cast a look to the rescuers and the lone gold rank among them, the rest being silver, said, "We have 10 minutes. More than enough time." She then spoke to her inventors. "Prepare the obsidian drill." The logic of using the obsidian drill was simple. If diamonds could only be cut by diamonds, then obsidian could only be cut by obsidian. The team rushed in, the 3 rescuers covering their flank and the 2 scouts leading the way. All light disappeared as they dipped into the mouth of the cave, delving into darkness that was so pure and so demonic that they could taste it, only able to see with their buddy system and sensory detection seals. The gold-rank inventors pulled out bits and pieces of a black piece of engineering, clicked the pieces together to form two simple jackhammers, but with a loudly whirring black tip that spun like a drill. 8 minutes! The head rescuer of the squad hummed and Nirvana laxly nodded. The team entered a wide entrance that spanned as wide as the base of the mountain, which was just about as equal to half of the Fire Country capital. At the edges of the cave sat white-haired men and women in dull orange robes with a simple white circle on their backs. On their foreheads was a black X, and on the back of their hands were black concentric circles with a red dot in the middle. Their thin, brittle hands unwaveringly flipped through all 12 hand seals, even as the Tsukai squad carefully swept to the end of the cave, where 4 great black pillars stood, reaching high into the dark, shadowy ceiling of the cave. Not even once did they open their eyes or stop their humming. The members of the Kurooni cult hummed in deep voices, making the dark release power of the obsidian more visible, creating tall, black figures that danced at the corners of their eyes, ghosting their hands over the squad's backs and shoulders and whispering seductively into their ears, words that the replica light energy prevented them from hearing. Nirvana kept her lips shut as she slinked ahead of her team, wincing at how loud the drill was to the deep hum of the cult, constantly flipping through their hand seals. She nodded her head to the wall behind the black pillars and stood guard behind the 2 inventors that went over and quickly began chipping off chunks of the black wall behind the 4 black pillars. 5 minutes. The rescue soldier signed and Nirvana forced down her tension as the Kurooni stayed in their cross-legged positions. The Kurooni was a somewhat peaceful, pacifist cult. What they believed in was a secret only revealed to members, but the outstanding fact was that they never once raised their hands to attack, not even to defend their base when Naruto ripped out a chunk of obsidian from the back wall. The Kurooni were clearly immune from the manipulations of the cursed obsidian and its dark release, even showing signs that they were able to control their illusions of darkness that spiraled before Nirvana's eyes. It was a terrible sight, even as there was zero light in the cave, worthy of being made into a horror movie, hundreds of Kurooni sitting close to the walls in meditation, figures and phantoms of evil giggling and drifting around them, and the maddening hum that rocked the squad to their very core. The girl rubbed her eyes and blindly nodded when she felt a tap on her shoulder, her squad telling her that they were done. 3 minutes. Full blast, let's get the hell out of here. She signed, watching as the scouts took off first and then her team before the rescue team came after them. They flew out of the cave with swift, quick gusts of wind from their respective flying methods and came to a halt outside the cave, where they were mostly safe from the cursed obsidian. The head inventor wasted not even a second before she slammed her fist onto her chest as the bright sun washed down on her to recharge the light energy. She waited a minute before there was a distinct beeping sound in her ear. She looked at the others and they nodded, their armor also recharged. Before the woman took the scroll, the obsidian had been sealed in and unsealed the impure metal. I need a fire. 2 of her inventors went about creating a bonfire from a simple fire release, campfire technique, and increasing the heat by using a wind release, blacksmith wind melting, which merely blew out hot air from their mouths into the campfire. The other inventors then slammed a 7-by-5-foot metal box over the blazing inferno, and then dropped another metal box of equal size on top of the first, opening the front like an oven. The head inventor threw in the cursed metal into the makeshift forge, flashing through 20 hand seals and whispering with her hand in the tiger hand seal. Fire and wind release, combination jutsu, curse red Amaterasu. The tips of her fingers glowed red with Kyubi chakra, stored in all of the division head's armor in case of emergencies, and red veins underneath the rainbow-haired teen's neck cracked and crawled up her face, entered her cheeks, and finally got to her lips as poisonous red fire billowed from her mouth and into the forge. The cursed metal began melting into a mold of a chest plate after 3 minutes of continuous red Amaterasu flames. Blue seals shone brightly in the chest mold, and the inventor stopped blowing out fire. She snapped her fingers and slipped on a pair of thick brown gloves handed to her by a subordinate. She lifted up the grate that still held small clumps of melting black metal and retrieved the mold. Nirvana then dropped the mold onto an anvil and an inventor brought down his hammer onto it, breaking the metal case it was in to reveal a rough, black version of their metal chest plate. The girl nodded in appreciation and took the hammer, idly keeping watch as her inventors melted more of the black metal into a right boot and a left boot utilizing the same fire and wind technique she used. Sparks exploded around her as she slammed her special, seal-reinforced hammer down onto the chest plate. Her goggle-protected eyes narrowed and continued bashing the metal until it began to smoothen out. The teen then dropped the chest plate into a presented large basin of water. The outside of the silver basin shone with red and gold seals, cooling down the metal and smoothing the chest plate even more so it truly resembled the chest plate of a Tsukai soldier. She went on to hammer out the irregular sides of the black boots until, 15 minutes later, she was done with her master's armor. She removed them from the water, still protected by the replica light energy, and sealed them up, taking off into the sky towards Earth Country to give her king. At that very moment. House 1. Kabuki Uzumaki Street. Civilian Soldier Residential District. The Tsukai Kingdom. The Civilian Soldier District, CSD for short, was one of the first districts established by the king to house the families and loved ones of soldiers currently serving in his army, the parents and relatives of Tsukai Academy students, and also to those that simply wished to live there, even though they had no physical tie to the army. The district was created as one of the ways Naruto showed his appreciation for his army. It was also made so that families could live close to their loved ones in the army without necessarily residing in the Soldiers' Accommodation District, SAD, where civilians were strictly prohibited from entering, no matter the situation. Even during the last festival the SAD was closed off from non-soldiers, only allowing other soldiers from other districts in. Back to the CSD. The district was split into 7 streets, with the last street being the only one given a name, while the first 6 were numbered. The last street, Kabuki Uzumaki Street, was where the families of those that served in the royal palace, closest to the king, lived. The street was lined on both sides by identical red bricked houses, humble front yard gardens, closed off with a waist-length white picket fence, a front porch with a bench and a fairly large backyard, also closed off by fences but rather tall ones that went up 8 feet high. A sleek black car rolled down the streets, bearing 2 small flags of the Flying Kingdom on the 2 edges of its boot, and with the windows tinted black. Families hustled out of their houses and peeked from their windows as the smooth car drove in and parked in front of the gate of the house numbered 1, the house at the end of the road that wasn't either on the left or right side of the street. Parents and children watched eagerly as Shinikora, the head maid and right hand of the king, alighted from the right back door of the royal car, swept to the other side and opened the door with a kind smile. She held out her right hand to the person, and a head of long red hair popped out of the car and grunted onto her feet. The maid quickly reached in, still supporting the king's mother with her left hand, and helped the woman bring out a crimson-red cane that had the Uzumaki clan symbol as well as the flag of the kingdom near the handle. The red-haired woman nodded her appreciation to the red-haired combat maid and took the cane, leaning heavily on it as Shinikora gently closed the door behind her. The car hummed for a moment before it went off. The driver, a gray-haired man in his late 40s, dropped out and opened the fence, allowing both women to enter the garden. Kushina looked around the garden, savoring the sweet scent of the flowers that drifted into her nose, making her body lose most of its tension. Shinikora smiled at her and said, "This house was specifically prepared for your arrival, Lady Kushina." Kushina, still admiring the flowers and how beautifully organized they were, said in a whisper, "My son did all this." The maid opened her arms and gestured around her, to the other houses, the great palace that stood above the entire kingdom, gleaming proudly in the bright sun, to the car that had brought them, and to the police officers and soldiers that ran at the top of the houses to protect the people, and finally to the raptly watching families that were gathered outside of their houses. "Your son did all of this, Kushina." The mother sniffed and rubbed her eyes with her right wrist, seeing as her left hand was holding her up using her cane. "The more I hear about my son, my children, the more I regret not being strong enough to be there for them." She felt a soft hand on her shoulder. Lord Naruto found the strength to overcome hurdles so he could provide a better life for those that suffered just like him. Kushina looked at the maid with an appreciative smile and nodded her head a little. He's a kind boy. She began to interpret the bloodthirst and rage he had showed her through his eyes, and his murderous smile to be guarded and hesitant to believe she was on his side. The woman quickly wiped a tear that found its way out of her right eye. He's a true Uzumaki. The maid teetered in place after the woman spoke, and Kushina furrowed her eyebrows. Lord Naruto and Lady Naruko will accept that they have Uzumaki blood running in their veins, but that is as close as they would get to your clan. The woman shrugged. Her mellow smile stood in place, unshaking. I don't mind. Naruto made a name for himself and Naruko is doing so too. They both made me proud, and that's more than enough for me. Shinikora bobbed her head and motioned to the wooden brick red door with the number 1 nailed to it. My lord Naruto personally prepared this house for you. She nodded to the driver butler, and the man pressed his palm to the door and stepped back when the doors shimmered to blue, then back to red. The door is protected by the best seals this kingdom has, and the door knob as well as the middle of the door are etched with sensitive, barely visible seals that would recognize you as soon as you touch them. If the risk of losing those keys and the need for keys entirely. She shifted aside, and Kushina, a level 10 seal master, hobbled to the door and squinted her eyes at it, smirking minutely at the tiny seals printed on it. She looked back to the maid, and the woman nodded in encouragement. Kushina placed her hand on the door, and immediately after there was a soft click inside, easing open a little and widening as the Uzumaki opened it. She walked in and gasped at the decor. The walls had soft blue and white wallpaper that washed away her anxieties. There was a flight of stairs a few feet from the door that led up to the 4 bedrooms upstairs as well as their separate bathrooms in the attic. But back downstairs there was a door around the back of the stairs that led into the well-furnished kitchen. There was an open space with no door that had 2 couches and 2 sofas facing a large screen, the television, before which was a coffee table. Kushina assumed it was the parlor. The floor of the whole house, besides the bathrooms and the kitchen, was covered in a blue carpet. There was another open space to her left where a large dining table with 4 seats placed around it. At the center of the table was a blood-red flower in a vase. It was the dining room. Walking into the dining room, she admired how bright and well-ventilated it was, appreciating the simple but durable furniture which she certainly knew would not be cheap if it was to be sold. Moving into the kitchen, she saw a door to the right of the entrance, and when she opened it she chuckled as she saw it filled with broomsticks and cleaning supplies, a storeroom. The door beside the storeroom opened to a space of equal size to the store, which was stocked with food on shelves, enough for a month and some days, if she used them well. She closed the doors and sighed in relief as she saw the words cleaning store and food store nailed on for her to see. Under the stairs was a trap door leading down into the basement, which had the house's boiler, circuit breaker, spare generator in case of a kingdom-wide blackout, and a few other supplies stored inside cardboard boxes. The redhead shambled out of the basement and beamed at Shinikora. This place is perfect. I'm glad. Lord Naruto put a lot of thought into this house. She followed the woman as she wobbled up the stairs on weak legs, still recovering from losing her seal shackles. Karen informed her that her chakra would never be the same, forever fractured, due to the kyubi, a vital part of her chakra network, being ripped out of her body. She opened a random bedroom and inhaled deeply, listening to Shinikora as she spoke. A few spies and scouts went to Konoha and broke into the Hokage mansion. They retrieved all of your things. She laughed lowly as Kushina squealed in excitement, running her hands through her clothes, hung neatly in the wardrobe. But despite that, you will receive a monthly stipend for your general upkeep, and King Naruto would certainly visit you from time to time. She handed the pleased a white earbud and helped her fix it into her ear. In case you need anything at all, then you will be able to reach me with that. Kushina felt the earbud gently fasten into her ear, but she could still hear fine. It is waterproof and lightning-proof, but if you somehow break it, then the intelligence division would be notified immediately and sent over with a replacement. If you lose it, then you will find 2 spares under your bed. There was a manual on the other smaller features of the earbud on the bed, close to her pillow, as well as an assurance that she, as well as every other civilian with the earbud, was only being tracked to ensure they didn't enter danger but not eavesdropped on. The Sukai Kingdom's police force were specially trained to handle suspicious characters within the kingdom. The woman nodded in understanding and sat down in a huff on the bed. She felt the soft bed sheets in her thin, pale fingers and gave the maid a lopsided smile. "I'm still surprised you're the Kyubi." Shinokura shrugged laxly and smoothly sat down beside the woman on the bed, enjoying how soft it was under her. "I'm really just grateful Lord Naruto found me useful enough to bring back to life." The Uzumaki turned to the seated-tailed beast with a question in her eyes. She opened her mouth but closed it, thinking the question would sound rude aloud. Shinokura rolled her eyes and patiently waited for the usually mouthy and brash woman to speak. Timidity and hesitation didn't suit her. "But Naruto, he has all the chakra and all the control. What use do you have to him when he has the biggest reasons you're useful?" Against her expectation, the combat maid simply smiled serenely and looked to the white painted ceiling. "Lord Naruto gave me only one reason: he deemed me useful to serve as closely as I have been honored to serve." She looked back down to Kushina and the woman saw fire spin in the maid's eyes, one of pride and determination at the same time. "He said I was smart." Kushina remained silent as the fox looked past her, lost in the memory of when she was first resurrected. "My Lord Naruto, he said to me that he has no need for dim and fearful people. He wants strong people, but at the same time he also wants smart people. People that knew the best course of action and would help advise him of it." The maid shakily dusted down her pristine white maid's apron and laughed mirthlessly. "He, my Lord Naruto, even said that he was too young and too immature to sit on the throne." Shinokura shot a look at Kushina and the woman smiled gently at the fox, placing a soft hand on the older redhead's twitching hands. "Even back then I knew he was much wiser than his age." The maid's shoulders sagged and her humorless smile dropped into a pensive, thoughtful frown. Sometimes I think he's just humoring me by having me around." Kushina shook her head and said, "From what you've told me and from what I've seen," he looked around to emphasize her point, "my son, the king, isn't humoring you." The woman flicked her eyes at the woman, then down to the woman's gentle hand over her hands. "Why do you think that?" The mother of the king grinned and playfully nudged Shinokura's ribs with her elbow. "Because you're smart." She groaned as she tried to stand up and the maid hastily got to her feet, supporting until she was fully leaning on her cane. "Damn you, Obito!" The Uzumaki weakly cursed the cause of her fractured chakra network. Shinokura covered her smile behind her right hand and Kushina scoffed, hobbling towards the door and moving down the stairs. "I want to go and meet the neighbors." She glanced over her shoulder and asked, "Would that be okay? Would Naruto mind?" The fox sighed in exasperation, mildly worried that her fractured chakra was making her anxious of her son's opinion of her. "Of course he won't mind." Both redheads purposely disregarded the fact that the world was now more or less under the king's rule. Kushina most especially pushed out any sadness from her mind at the thought that in a few short hours her husband was going to be killed by his eldest children, the twins. She smiled at Shinokura as the woman placed a hand on her shoulder and eased the gate open for her, letting shuffle to the neighbors at the bottom right side of the street, a small family of 3, a white-haired man, a black-haired woman and a male toddler with a mix of both hair colors. She waved at them and called, "Hey there!" Minato deserved everything he had coming to him. It made the mother both angry at her almost weak, crippled state and depressed that the deed was most certainly going to happen, but the Uzumaki refused to feel sympathy for the yondaime. Hell, if she was still in her prime then she would squeeze the life out of the blonde man herself, watching with a wide smile on her face and a song in her soul as the light left his eyes. But since she couldn't do it herself, and even if she could her children would never allow her to do it, then she was content with Naruto and Naruko ending their father's life. It was all going to end where it all started. Grass Country. Chapter 20. Present. Kokuchisusuk Town, southeastern border town of Earth and Grass Countries. The Counter Konoha Division. The 11th Rank Sukai Guard Campsite. Earth Country. A clear path was created for the king and he walked through with his hands in his pockets, smiling wanly at the formal soldiers, ranging from males and females from bronze to gold rank. Behind him marched his twin sister, Naruko, and the king's younger brother, Minato Jr. The red-haired girl had her mask perched at the top of her head slightly over her left ear, and the departmentless blonde boy tried to keep his face straight. Both wore their ranks, silver and bronze respectively, with pride. The amount of respect and reverence for the red-haired king was palpable. Soldiers subtly inclined their heads to the ground, even as they stood at attention, and muttered greetings to him. There was a loud call at the front, several yards from the king, and the soldiers slammed their right fists on the left side of their chests, straightening up as one. They stomped their feet in unison, creating a deep tremor. "Commander present!" Indra, head of frontliners, yelled at the front of the multitude of Tsukai soldiers. He was standing alongside Magi, head of Fuinjutsu, Karen, head medic, Uekuso, head of espionage and infiltration, and Nirvana, head of inventors. The platinum ranks followed the lower ranked by holding their right fists over their heart. The holder of the kubikiri looked over the rigidly standing soldiers, all who looked forward without shaking and with their chests puffed out. Naruto's smile became a small smirk as he kept on walking through the ranks, his overcoat swishing with the faint breeze blowing through the border town. The two Solidar marching behind him, his siblings, stomped on with their king, lifting their chins slightly. "The Tsukai Code!" the man roared, and all the soldiers, platinum to bronze, roared back. "Discipline, order, obedience, and loyalty!" They were the foundation of which the great kingdom was built. A ragtag cluster of people that had no future and no hope surrounded a child with the eyes of a god and followed him, took orders from him, and were deathly loyal to him. They were the ones that had made a future for themselves despite the bad hand life had thrown at them. And they owed all their gratitude to their king. Dying for him would be a privilege every one of them would want. Junior felt the air become thick at the amount of esteem that Naruto held. Fixing his eyes on his brother's back, he could feel them glaze over with tears. He finally had a family. The king's army was his family. Naruko shot a look at him from the corner of her eyes, and the boy subtly nodded without looking, blinking his eyes to get the tears out. There would be time to savor this feeling later, but for now he had been tasked to follow his king brother with his silver rank sister. Back in the kingdom, a live feed from over a dozen circular drones flew silently through the air and recorded the king as he moved through his soldiers, sending the feed back to the kingdom where it was broadcasted only in the soldiers' barracks. Soldiers and police officers that were entrusted to stay back and protect the kingdom filled the mess halls of the different barracks, and watched with complete reverence as their king got closer to the front of the assembled soldiers. Sitting at the front was the king's mother and the king's right hand. Kushina gripped her cane with tight hands, trying to regulate her breathing as she watched her children. Especially Naruto. The boy exuded power and authority. So much so that she could hear the chattering reduce and the soldiers around her standing onto their feet to salute him. Hamato, head of intelligence and interrogation, and Satoshi, head of rescue and support, both of whom were the only soldier division heads to stay back, led the salute. The power the king wielded, the authority he held, willingly given to him by his people, it was terrifying. The Rinnegan king reached the front, and the division heads, proud platinum rank soldiers of the Tsukai kingdom, dropped onto their right knees and bowed their heads slightly. "At ease!" His order was low but carried over to the massive assembly and to the soldiers in the kingdom. There was a general shuffle of legs as they placed their hands behind their backs and opened their legs slightly. The division heads got up and copied the motion. Naruko and Junior stood behind their king brother, also at ease. Naruto regarded the division heads for a few seconds before he nodded. "Well done." "It's our pleasure, sir," Indra answered humbly, acknowledging the two-worded praise his king had given him for arranging the bronze, silver, and gold ranks according to their different divisions and according to the strict procedure for when they were expected to face a full frontal attack. The frontliners stood at the front with the Fuinjutsu specialists, the inventors stood at the sides also with Fuinjutsu specialists, the intelligence soldiers and hunters were nestled in the middle with the medics, with the hunters tasked to provide protection for the other two. Rescue, support, scout, spies, and retrievers were situated at the back. Their specialties were not full-on combat but rather support. No soldier stood out of place. Naruto briefly looked at them and pursed his lips, nodding slowly. He removed the gunbai Madara's weapon, strapped onto his back and idly tossed it to Nirvana, adding her to the three-man team that would carefully analyze the weapon, comprising of Indra and Hamato. Admittedly, he had the memories of the Uchiha that used to wield the weapon, but the memories on recorded the man discovering the gunbai in hidden darkness. His eyes slowly moved over the thousands standing in neat rows, waiting for his order. Very impressive. Thank you, sir. You responded. Naruto breathed out and turned around, steadily walking down the rigidly standing soldiers. Naruko and Junior trooped behind him and Indra and Karen followed as well. How many soldiers do we have here? 5,000, sir, as per your orders. And in Fire Country? 10,000, sir. Any news? Yes, sir. Naruto stopped and turned to the man, standing before the weapons specialists of the frontline division. Naruto patiently waited for Indra to continue. It was a success. Division heads Mora and Nora have reported that the capital has been overrun and the daimyo willingly surrendered. Konoha? There was a slight hiccup in the invasion. The clan heads had smuggled their children and a large number of their clan mates in hidden underground railway leading to an island roughly 50 miles offshore, but the rest of the invasion was a success. Have the clan heirs been captured? The man was almost hesitant to reply and Naruto cocked his head to the side, furrowing his eyebrows in question. Yes? Your hunters and scouts are still pursuing, sir. Naruto scoffed and turned around, sweeping his Rinnegan eyes over the section of soldiers he was standing in front of. Never mind. There is nowhere on this planet that we cannot get to. Their fate is already sealed. Tell them to follow at their own pace and be wary for traps. Of course, sir. Indra answered with a relieved breath. Naruto's eyes soon fixed on a particular person standing in the weapons specialist section, a dark-skinned woman with black hair styled in thick waist-length dreadlocks and gleaming yellow eyes, contact lenses. She was a silver rank and her shoulders shook with trepidation as her king stared at her. Naruto looked over her shoulder and saw that she was wielding 2 steel batons and she also had a longbow slung across her torso. All the soldiers in his force, beside his 2 siblings, passed through the academy before they rose up the ranks, and all academy graduations passed through the king's office for personal scrutiny, keeping careful track of each of his 40,000 and more soldiers in his force. The Rinnegan Naruto bore never allowed him to forget anything and he squinted his eyes, looking to the sky briefly before he snapped his fingers as he remembered the woman's name. Vine Toryun, am I correct? The woman blushed heavily as he spoke, swallowing thickly and nodding. Yes, sir. Best in your year and an ace at target practice. Naruto recalled as he gave the woman a faint smile. What was it they called you in your class? Sand shooter, my lord. The woman answered, trying her best to keep her voice from shaking and her eyes from glazing over with proud tears. It was every soldier's dream to be simply spoken to by their king, even if it was a fleeting word. How is your father? Is the treatment working? Very well, sir. The migraine meds prescribed to him are working wonders. That's good to hear. Naruto nodded. He looked over his shoulder and narrowed his eyes. His Rinnegan zoomed in several miles at the approaching force of Konoha ninjas, led by his father wearing his full combat attire. The king turned back to the silver rank and said, I hear your brother and his wife have a new baby. Congratulations. Thank you, sir. Vine couldn't help but blubber, sniffing and giving a watery smile to the Rinnegan king. His name is Orochi. Naruko and Junior shared a look, wondering why their brother was making idle chatter with a soldier while they all waited for the arrival of their father, but eventually shrugged it off as Naruto raised an eyebrow and asked if she had any pictures. The woman fumbled through her pants pockets, profusely apologizing when her wallet dropped onto the floor, and showed Naruto the picture she had taken of the little child, barely a week old. I'm sure you must be very happy. The woman stashed her wallet back into her pocket and bowed. Yes, sir. We owe it all to Lady Karen and to you, sir. Naruto nodded appreciatively and patted her shoulder once. He breathed and asked, Is this your first expedition with me? No, sir, I was in Kumo and Kiri. Is that so? He muttered, then he said to his bewildered siblings, I'm not sure Vine here remembers, but when Naruko and I were back in Oto, on our first day there, she gave us her coat. Vine's eyes enlarged and she gaped. I think I remember. Naruko furrowed her eyebrows before her eyes lit up. Oh yeah. A thin, shaky hand reached out from a cage across from the two shivering children. Naruto had caught a cold from the frigid winter weather rushing through the Oto and flowing through the slave pens. The red-haired girl was tightly clutching her brother, rubbing her tiny hands up and down his arm to warm him up. Naruko didn't care that she was freezing to death as well, she just wanted her brother to be okay. Hey! A weak voice whispered and Naruko looked up. Naruto shook as he did so as well, grabbing onto his sister for dear life as the icy fingers of terror took hold of him. Naruko could feel the fear crawl up her spine, but she needed to be the strong one for them. Her brother was sick, he wasn't strong enough to be strong. The girl's shoulders sagged in relief as she saw a pair of dark brown eyes shining from the cage opposite her. Their eyes adjusted to the dim lighting and saw a girl that didn't look older than 11 waved at them shortly, and pulled her hands back in when a flash of light shone on the walkway between their cages. The Oto guard moved on after a moment. Vine shuffled closer to the bars of the cage and gripped it in her hands, weakly smiling at the children. You're new here, right? Naruko nodded once, her lips sealed shut and her eyes guarded. I came in 4 months ago with my little brother Kasuki, from Hidden Darkness. Our aunt sold us to Orochimaru to settle a debt. My name is Vine, she whispered, and shifting aside to show the sleeping lump nestled at the far back of the cage, swaddled in a thin black overcoat, the same one Vine wore. The shiver Naruto had been fighting to suppress ran through his body and he sneezed. The dark-skinned girl's eyebrows creased in concern. Cold? The 4-year-old girl, still a bit wary, nodded silently and hugged her freezing brother tighter. There was low rustling from the other cage and Vine took off her black overcoat, throwing it through the walkway without hesitating. You can have that. Tears filled Naruko's eyes as the warm, but dirty, piece of clothing landed on them. But Dash, I can share with my brother, the girl said, giving a flippant wave, looking away for a moment. The younger girl snatched up the coat and draped it over herself and her brother. All the while Naruto stared at the girl with wide, reflective purple eyes. His small hand wiggled out of the side of the coat and gripped the bar. The child coughed and whispered, "Thank you? Thank you?" He had been keeping a careful eye on her since her induction into the academy, ensuring, from the background, that she was properly treated and trained. The twins would have died in the next few nights if not for her help, joint Kyuubi Jinchuriki or not, they were still children. Naruto beamed at her and patted her shoulder. The woman's knees trembled and she bowed deeply to Naruto. "You're very welcome, my lord." A long time ago, barely a month after the kingdom of Tsukai was up in the sky, one of his first orders was for Mora, headhunter, to track Vine and Kosuka's father. They had found the man wandering around Kumo, searching for his 2 children. The aunt that had sold them had been accidentally killed by loan sharks as they struggled to kidnap her, so she was not there to tell the mourning father where his children were. The man suffered from severe migraines from all the time he had disregarded his personal health, and stubbornly looked for Vine and Kasuki. He brought the man back and permitted Shinikora to reunite them as he dealt with matters of the kingdom. At that time he was too busy leading, organizing and strengthening his kingdom to set up a meeting with the Torian family, but he had sent his blessings, ensuring that the family were well treated, through his right hand, Shinikora. If there is anything you need, anything at all, then all you have to do is ask. He reached forward with his right hand, patiently waiting for her to reciprocate, and the dark-skinned lady blubbered, faltering as she realized that her king wanted to shake her hand. She sniffed and shook the hand, bowing her torso deeply in gratitude. "I'm honored, my lord." Naruto patted the back of her hand and released the limb, sticking his left hand into his pocket, and sighing as he sensed a swarm of Konoha ninjas approaching. "Say, Vine, can you help me with something else?" "Anything, my lord." "Can you lend me your longbow? I always forget to pack my own weapons." This sent a ripple of laughter through the crowd of soldiers and his siblings. This was because they knew their king didn't need weapons, so he didn't pack them, Any weapon he sees on the battlefield that he thinks would serve him he would pick up, use and discard, like the blood-caked Tonto in Rude Headquarters and the half-burnt katana in Hot Water Country. They had seen him do it. The only question was which weapon he didn't know how to use. The woman quickly removed her longbow and gave it to Naruto. Of course, my lord. Thank you. He took the weapon and idly promised as he fully turned to the approaching dust cloud of ninjas. I'll give this back to you in a minute. Vine nodded and peered over her king's shoulder at the ninjas. It's been a long time since I last used a longbow. Naruko looked at her brother curiously and asked. What was the last time you used one? 5 years ago in Hidden Darkness. He answered, testing out how firm the smooth silver and red bow was in his grip by pulling the string and releasing it. What were you doing in darkness, Lord Brother? Junior asked, watching as Naruto requested for an arrow from Vine. The redhead twirled the silver-tipped, seal-reinforced, wooden arrow in his right hand and gripped the bow in his left, closing his eyes as he tried to remember. Orochimaru was afraid of entering darkness and staying for more than a few hours because he had heard there were monsters capable of destroying entire countries there. Were there? Junior prodded inquisitively. Naruto nodded. The rumor was a bit exaggerated, but there were remarkable beings there. He turned back to the weapons specialist section of the frontline division and jutted his chin at the white-haired man standing directly beside the excited dark-skinned woman. You're a vampire, correct? The pale man looked at Naruto in surprise and nodded curtly. Yes, sir, I am. By the way, how is your family? I hear that you're adapting well to the blood pills. They are all fine and we like the blood substitute very well, sir, thank you. Naruto looked around the man at a diminutive, silver-skinned man with pointed ears and a pointed nose. You are a pixie, right? Yes, sir. Naruto nodded and said as he returned most of his attention to the incoming attack. You can find the written report of my adventure in Hidden Darkness in the public library, but for now we have other matters to attend to. He looked at Indra and asked, Have you gotten the number of Konoha ninjas? Nora, head of scout and retrieval, has counted up to 408. One of them, 67% are Jounin A and BU. 23% are regular Jounin, and the remaining 10% are Chunin at best. The black masked lady had done so on her way to Konoha with her brother, Mora, headhunter. How was our father able to gather so many? Naruko asked, but Indra remained silent. Naruto rolled his eyes and nodded for the man to answer her question. He pulled out most of them from retirement, long-term missions, the Fire Country capital, and the rest from his ANBU. Still, 5,000 against 481, Naruto said, trailing off as the Konoha ninjas slowed to a stop. Their father stood in front, panting for air and clenching and unclenching his fists. The blond man's eyes bugged out as he saw his thought-to-be-dead daughter, Naruko, staring back at him several yards away, standing slightly behind her kingly brother. Junior lifted his chin defiantly and met his father's betrayed eyes. This is going to be a slaughter. He adjusted his arrow onto the longbow and ordered, Separate 400 from our forces and get them in position. The king's fingers holding back the arrow glowed red. He straightened his back and closed his left Rinnegan eye. There was a small spinning vortex of red chakra forming at the tip of his arrow, and he released it. A massive gust of wind blew back after this. 480. Minato Namikaze was brought out of his daze when the ninja standing behind him to his right, Gunma, was brought down by a blink of red light. His face dissolved and his brain melted out of his ears. The ninjas began muttering among themselves as Naruto gave Vine her bow, watching as the tall, head-cleaver-wielding man started yelling orders that they could not comprehend because the man was speaking in code. The armored soldiers moved among themselves and a few marched back, leaving the few that stood in place. Naruto smirked at his accomplishment and threw his arm over his sister's shoulders, motioning for Junior to stay back as the twins began walking towards their father, who in turn motioned for his ninjas to remain behind as he too walked closer. The twins wore the same expression, wide smiles and upward curving eyes, but as Naruko also threw her arm over Naruto's, Minato noticed something transpire between them, even as they showed no change physically. They were talking. They were planning. And he was right. The two dangerous redheads hummed and tapped their shoulders once at the same time. Plan? Plan? Naruto laughed under his breath and tapped her shoulder 3 times. I've had one for 7 years. I just want to hear if you want to add anything. I was thinking we mix it up. Savor it for as long as possible. The girl proposed. What do you have in mind? How is your transformation? She asked, then she scoffed when Naruto's lips pursed to stifle his amusement. Oh yeah? There was a deeper, more intricate reason she had asked if he could use transformation. Something definitely surprised their father. Is it physical? Tap. Yes. Mine too. Now what's your plan? She asked as they were now within a few short yards of their father. How are you with combination jutsu? If you take the lead, then I'm sure I can do it. Weapons? I'm a walking weapon, was the girl's drear response. Her bones were made out of the planet's second strongest metal, adamantium, second only to obsidian, and her Uzumaki genes had successfully assimilated the dead bone pulse bloodline Orochimaru had introduced into her body years ago, so she could create knives from any part of her body, and seeing as she was the one with the metal-based bloodline, she could break them off and use them however she wished. Naruko was indeed a walking weapon. Hand to hand? We freestyle it. Twin style. His eyes drifted to the hundreds of stunned silent ninjas behind the yondaime. They tried putting up a courageous front, but with what they had heard the king of the Tsukai kingdom had done, and with the dead girl twin alive, they could feel their initial bravery seep out of their feet. These idiots just walked into a trap, so don't worry about them. They stopped roughly 5 feet away from the man, perfectly between the two opposing sides. Minato nose breathing raggedly from his nose, his eyes were bloodshot and his eyebrows were twitching. Naruto lifted his left hand and waved a little, his eyes closed peacefully and his lips stretched into a gentle smile. Hello? The man glared hatefully at the carefree siblings and spat. You think you've won, don't you? Naruto's lips tightened as he held in a chuckle, but Naruko beamed at her father and nodded. I think we have. The man got angrier at the girl's response, and he rounded on her, bared his teeth in a mad grin. I watched the clip of your murder. Naruko's grin slowly dropped into a frown. Every night and every morning I watch it, justice being served every single time for one of the beasts that destroyed Konoha. Naruto, though, still wore his happy face. Lot of good that did for you, huh? He tilted his head to the side and tapped his sister's shoulder to calm her down, narrowing his godly eyes at his father. Look at what her death has caused. Neither your eyes nor your army can extinguish the will of fire. Minato grated, looking straight into Naruto's dangerous eyes. Tsunade said that, you know. Naruko breathed, giving her father a lopsided smile. And now she's dead. Monster! Minato snarled, his eyes widening with insanity as the twins' faces glowed, simultaneously saying, Thank you? You've taken my wife, you've brainwashed my son! The yondaime roared. Spit flew from his mouth as he yelled. This time when you die, both of you, you won't. Come back! The red-haired king smirked as his father finally snapped, and he whispered into his fully operational earbud. Now! The ground rumbled beneath the ninjas behind the yondaime, and the 400 Tsukai soldiers that had been separated from the 5,000 dragged and 400 of the 408 Konoha ninjas into the ground using earth release, double suicide decapitation technique, pulling them entirely into the ground and killing them efficiently, then leaping out to engage the remaining 80 ninjas. It was over in 10 seconds. Minato turned around sharply and his fists tightened when he saw gleaming bronze, silver and gold-wearing soldiers instead of his ninjas. Blood soaked deep into the grass, staining the sides of the soldiers' boots, but there were no bodies to be found. There were 2 soldiers wearing platinum rank armor, Yu and Indra, and they looked back stoically to the father of the king and his sister, standing at ease. There wasn't even time for the Konoha ninjas to scream in surprise. He was all alone. Sometimes I wonder, Naruto started, looking up at the sky and sighing in satisfaction. I stayed up most nights and wondered. He paused and his lips screwed to the side. Why a seal master, a level 10 seal master, would blame his children for what they clearly did not do. Sweat started rolling down Minato's head, realizing that if his son's army could take down highly trained ninjas with such ease and efficiency, then what hope did he have against the one the army loyally served and his precious sister? He scrambled to find the anger that had overcome him before but only got a few small drops, then it was gone. Why seal the Kyuubi into your children and start hating them soon after? Naruko muttered. She dropped her arm from Naruto's shoulder, and Naruto did so as well. She crossed her arms and Naruto placed his hands into his black overcoat pockets. The man gulped and turned around in a full circle, the unbelievably capable Tsukai soldiers on one side, then his seething children on the other. His hands reached into his white with red flamed cloak and pulled out two tri-pronged kunai, pointing them at his children and entering a strong hummingbird taijutsu stance. You are the reason my wife lost her mind, he whispered weakly, still trying to justify his hate for the twins. The bile that had settled in his stomach became heavier, forcing him to actually think about what he was about to do. You dash. The two redheads narrowed their eyes in sync and their hands went to their sides, cocking their heads to the side and looking at their father with wide, evil smiles. Do you love us, father? The man gulped again and his body trembled slightly. His bright blue eyes snapped from one twin to the other, each wore the same expression and they echoed their question to him again. Do you love us, father? The man's lips twisted down and he spat. Fuck you, Kyuubi. Deep down in his heart, deep within his soul, he knew he was going to be killed in the most ruthless, barbaric way possible at the hands of his children. The unexplainable, illogical anger that made him blame his children for being born to hold the Kyuubi left him with, for once, coherent thought to realize that he was as good as dead. He has scraped Konoha of every strong shinobi, leaving behind the clan heads as they refused to leave the village unprotected, and those ninjas had been taken out without so much as a whimper in defiance. He remembered videos Orochimaru sent him of Naruko's progress. When the girl was only 5, she was able to lift weights of up to 400 pounds. An underweight girl of less than 15 pounds was able to lift 400 pounds. She could move at high speeds at the drop of a hat. She was able to use any knife, no, any pointed object, like they were simply extensions of her body. She was basically Jounin level when she was 6. And then there was Naruto. The yandame's eyes flicked to his smiling son, and his heart became grim. The boy was a god. Plain and simple. The child could crush skulls with an idle thought, level entire plains with a swipe of his hand, and he commanded the unquestioned loyalty of an army of monsters and mutants. His eyes briefly lifted up into the sky and he could still see the dark red clouds that swirled above Iwagakure, pelting down small burning rocks and showering roughly half of the village with soft, black acid rain. The man could feel the Rinnegan King's battles hundreds of miles away. The sky lit up with red and black fire and there was a terrible roar, the Kyuubi, ripping through the courage of the unfortunate ninjas he had dragged along to their graves. It was at that moment, that very moment he saw Kyuubi change from red to pure, unforgivable black, that he began second-guessing his motive. Naruko alone, with her indestructible bones, could do him in, with effort, of course, and Naruto could easily toy with him without using his Rinnegan. But with the two kids together, the twins united after years of separation. He was dead already. Minato Namikaze clenched his teeth and forced out a breath from his tight chest. His eyes lit up for the shortest of moments when he remembered his seal tags scattered all over Konoha, but as his hands tightened around the Hiroshin kunai in his hands there was a low fizzle and a quiet pop. Nothing. He tried again and the pop was more pronounced as yellow light crackled over his white robes. Still, nothing. His eyebrows shot into his hairline as his escape plane went up in a glorious ball of fire, as Naruto spoke. Did you really think I won't have countermeasures in place in case you tried to run away? The king lifted his arms up, palm facing the sky, and stopped as they were level with his sister's elbow. The air became charged and the man cast his eyes up, realizing that there was a shimmering red field of chakra, a Fuinjutsu barrier, thousands of miles above them. He swept his eyes around and saw that the barrier extended far, far away from them. Grass country is now sealed off from the outside world. True to what he had said, the 400-man force that had killed the Konoha ninjas were now nowhere to be seen. He found them standing many yards away with the bigger army, behind the red-haired twins. Behind Minato was thousands of miles of grass, small trees but no human life. The border between grass and earth was only some yards behind the two teams. There waited the king's army. He didn't want to know what had happened to the people of grass country. I think a cordoning off whole country would give us more than enough space to fight, don't you think, father? The girl twin asked with a playful smile. Her hands stayed at her sides and Naruto's returned to his, just as the mighty barrier merged with the background once again. It's funny how you didn't think Lord Brother would prepare the stage perfectly. Naruto shrugged and said. But I'm not so cruel as to completely neutralize one of your signature moves, so you're permitted to use your Hirishin and your Rasengan within this barrier. The man's nose flared angrily. Permitted? Naruto looked at his sister, and the two rolled their eyes, saying at the same time, Yes, permitted. Minato's blue eyes hardened and his hands shook with anticipation, watching as the twins settled into matching stances. Their center of gravity lowered a little and their feet slightly apart, holding up their fisted hands under their eyes. They waited. Their bodies still and rigid. Waiting. Then the man understood why. They want me to attack first. They wanted him to dig his own grave. In his current situation, with how boxed in he was, he had only two options: go ahead and attack first, or suicide. The second option sounded so refreshing at that moment. Ending his life with a clean, deep slice of his kunai in his neck and watch the morbid horror that was surely to show on the twins' face. It would certainly sting the two. They had obviously been planning this meet-up for years, and to end it so abruptly, and so anticlimactically would serve to be a great disappointment to them. But he couldn't kill himself. It would serve as a waste to all the ninjas he had dragged along on the suicide mission. The lives that had been lost during the global invasion just to get to him. The blood that had been spilt in his place. The countries decimated and destroyed. A/N, the disappointed readers who had been waiting 20 chapters just to read this reunion. Yeah, suicide was out of the option. The last battle was inevitable. He would attack first, but would go down swinging with all his might, and hopefully, with at least one of the twins sealed in his stomach. Minato threw both of his kunai into the ground before him and his hands laced together into the dragon hand seal, flipping to rat, and then lastly to bird. Curse seal of the underworld. The corner of Naruto's lips curled up a little as Minato growled the words. There was a shrill whistle coming from the man's body, and 2 5-foot-long horns grew out from the sides of his temple, curling once and then pointing at the twins. The Yandame's body became a dark red hue and his eyes became cold black as a complicated seal spun into life on his neck, hidden under his white cloak's high collar. The man's hands became savagely clawed but not his feet. His form grew to be twice as big as he normally was and thick, barrel-like but still very mobile muscles popped into his arms and legs. The ground cracked as sharp fangs grew out of his mouth and the man roared, a horrifying, death-conjuring sound, and a pair of spiny but magnificent black wings blasted out from his back, shredding his precious cloak. Minato ripped off his shirt, revealing the runes and seals that moved up and down his crimson-red torso like living creatures, winding around his arms and reaching his fingers' tips. A deep, ground-shaking growl escaped the sides of the demon's clenched teeth, flapping his wings twice experimentally. Naruto hummed and he said, "The stolen seal." The Namikaze might have trusted the dead snake sage, but that didn't stop him from stealing the man's most prized creation, the curse seal of the underworld. There was heaven, there was earth, and there was underworld. The last curse seal was just as strong as earth, albeit with little drawbacks and more benefits. The memories of Orochimaru Naruto possessed only recalled the seal being stolen years ago, and the man had summarily tortured every living creature in the building till they were a frothing mess, but had ultimately forgotten it as soon as became fascinated with the Sharingan, would release, and the twins. Naruto gently tapped the side of his sister's clenched right fist with his left, and he shook his head once, flicking his eyes to the sky and then to her feet. The girl didn't respond to his silent message for a second, watching as Minato steadily lumbered towards them, wielding two tri-pronged kunai in each hand and breathing out black dust from his mouth, until she shook her head and tapped his fist back. Naruto and Naruko smirked, and they mutually bumped the sides of their fists. The world slowed down to a crawl as Naruto nipped a Hiraishin kunai honed at his neck out of the air and stabbed it into the ground. Naruko, frozen in time, slowly moved her eyes to her fast-moving brother, and two triangles, made out of QB fire, cracked into existence 2 inches above her head. Her whisker marks thickened and her eyes dilated, then constricted into a thin line, before opening to form Fox's eyes. The world began moving quickly before her eyes as she released hold of every single limiter in her body, matching the pace at which her brother saw and moved, to an extent. Her jaw tightened when her senses sent a strong pulse through her body, looking down to the kunai stabbed into the ground. She and her brother dove away in opposite directions as the kunai exploded into red fire. Naruko quickly looked up to her brother with her demonic vulpine eyes and found him crouched on the ground roughly 30 feet away from the blast zone. He looked back at her. His black with red ringed eyes glowed with intention and his whisker marks darkened and thickened as he too began using QB chakra. Wide grins ripped onto their faces as they blasted towards their demonic father, their heads low and their arms flying behind them. Pat, 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 pat. Their feet echoed despite the din of destruction over IWA, and an iron, segmented tail tore out of the demon's tailbone and shot to Naruko first. The hunter skidded on her knees, leaning her head back as the tail threatened to impale her from under the chin, and past her brother, who leaped over the horned beast, his black overcoat fluttering in the chakra wind. The two landed on opposite sides and spun around, engaging in a blindingly fast hand-to-hand battle with the screaming behemoth that used to be their father. Naruto jabbed Minato's side, leaned his body back as the tail attacked him and driving his elbow straight down onto the semi-sentient appendage. There was a violent spark of red and yellow light that burst from the tail as the cursed metal came in contact and Minato winced, briefly distracted in his heated fight with his daughter, allowing her to slug him across the face, racking her adamantium claws over his face as she spun around with a backhand. More sparks rained down as she did so, and she diligently front-flipped over the demon, stepping on her father's head as her brother rolled under the savage tail onto Minato's other side. It was like a game to them, see who could get their father angrier with their evasive offensive attacks. The man tried his possible best to keep up, in spite of his higher-level curse seal activation, but the twins moved in a fury of limbs and claws, switching sides every once in a while. The demonic bellowed threw the two teens apart, and the yondaime flapped his wings twice, shooting out wind blades imbued with fire. Naruto skimmed around the attacks, as did Naruko, running to meet each other in front of their father, when Naruko leaped into the air to her brother, and her body shifted into the form of a pure adamantium scythe with a pair of eyes on the blade. The king spun the scythe in his hands and grunted as he deflected blade after blade, baring his teeth as the demon flashed over to him in a burst of fire. He bent back, moving the scythe to over his head keep him balanced, and then fluidly shifted as Naruko returned back to normal. The girl caught the cold black, cursed obsidian katana Naruto had turned into, and clanged the blade against the dangerous claws of her father. She repelled every clawed attack her father sent with her brother katana and hopped away as the man bellowed out toxic red fire from his mouth. The girl twirled the katana in her right hand as she flew away from the fire. The pair of Rinnegan eyes reflecting off the obsidian blade widened, and the girl took this as a mental cue for her to stop backtracking, slashing the incoming pillar of fire once. The fire was dragged into the blade and she sent it back with another slash, following behind it closely. She tossed the blade ahead of her and leaped after it. The katana changed back into the king and the girl shifted into a large battle fan. Naruto caught her by the handle and swept it after the ball of fire tunneling towards the demon, propelling it faster. Minato batted the ball of fire away and used the back of his right arm to block the downward bash from the boy twin. Naruto narrowed his eyes at his father and stepped on the older fighter's abdomen and flipping back. Unlike what Minato hoped, he knew that the underworld seal only increased the strength, speed and response time of the user by disabled them from using conventional jutsu, that is nature transformations. He and Naruko just had to be stronger and faster than him. The girl changed back to normal in his arms and he dropped her, ducking close to the ground as the man roared to them. They got back to their feet, and Naruto's eyes pulsed as his sister began flashing through a set of hand seals. An invisible force wrapped around their father's neck and violently yanked him towards them as the girl slammed her palms onto the ground, both grunting their respective jutsu. Universal pull. Earth release, blast brick wall. The demonic man cracked head first into the raised defensive earth wall, bouncing off it twice with the Rinnegan jutsu, until he finally broke through, only to meet the twins' combination jutsu. Naruto's left hand was melded together with Naruko's right in a tiger seal, before it flipped to rat as their fists clenched, Naruto's crackling with red lightning and Naruko was sharp, red water. Water and lightning release, combination jutsu, collision course. Their clenched hands swelled up with chakra until they were roughly as big as an average adult's head, and they brought it together as Minato kept on hurtling towards them with the last Rinnegan jutsu, crushing his head between their fists. KSSHHHHHH. The hastily formed shadow clone weakly fell apart, and the two redheads shifted their eyes up at the shattered brick wall, and their chakra boxing gloved fists raced forward as two balls of soccer ball-sized Rasengan blinked out of nowhere. Their father pushed it on with each of his hands and his wings propelled him faster. Demonic Rasengan met twin combination jutsu. The result was catastrophic. The ground beneath them moaned as the two powerful opposing forces crashed together, and a thick crack formed between them and went separate ways. As they pushed harder and Minato flapped his wings faster to overcome the two, the crack widened and widened, until the earth under them, spanning in a 40 feet radius, collapsed under their feet. The twins crashed inside and dust exploded outwards, and their father hovered over the newly formed pit and wasted no time clapping his fists together and cupping them. A fizzling blue Rasengan formed in his hands and he raised it over his head with both hands, roaring with intention as it grew to the size of the Toad summon boss, and he drove it onto the pit under him. Rasengan! He guffawed deeply as he pushed it harder and harder, his eyes becoming hysterically wide, but he ground to a stop. His Rasengan blew apart in a glorious gust of wind, and he gasped as he saw two burning kunai shoot towards him. He coughed as the silver and black weapon stunk into his chest, and he did not know when his back smashed into the ground, skidding back a few feet before eventually stopping. The weapons shifted into the forms of his children and he sat up, only for his head to bounce backwards off the ground and back into an upright sitting position as Naruto bashed his knee into his father's face. Naruko swept around to the back and slammed her heel into the center of the demon's head, smoothly slid back 2 steps and shot back, piercing her sharp nails under her father's massive shoulder blades, tearing them outwards in a spurt of blood and chakra. Naruto grit his teeth and clenched his fists powerfully as he blasted 3 punches into his father's stomach and ended the sequence with a rising elbow that cracked under the red demon's chin. Minato could feel his jaw dislodge and a few teeth sent back into his throat, hacking out more blood as his son leaped into the air, laced his fists together, and came down with them slamming into the top of his already fractured head. Crack! The man weakly swiped at his son and the teen rolled to his left, giving Naruko room to enter his line of vision with her bloody hands and bash her head into his in a savage headbutt. She rolled back as his tail swiped at her, and he screamed in agony as Naruto reached his back and gave his tailbone a single kick, grabbing hold of the wildly flailing metal tail and tearing it out. Pain could not even begin to cover what Minato Namikaze was feeling. 4 fingers, Naruko's, stabbed into his left eye and the subsequent Kyuubi chakra on her nails burst his eye, charred it beyond recognition and regeneration. He heard a crunch, and it felt like it was coming from miles away, as his mind slowly churned to stay awake, until he was hit with pain so hard it rattled his skeleton, realizing that his knees had been crushed by a pair of feet. He grunted lowly as he felt his arms swing against his will, hoping and praying to at least scrape against his attackers, but the limbs were grabbed by 2 different pairs of hands and the 2 people holding his hands pulled slightly and cracked their knees straight up, destroying the man's elbows and allowing his hands to bonelessly flop onto his sides. He heard a distant wheeze, and a moment later 2 fists crushed against the sides of his neck and met, coming apart before his head could fall off his shoulders. Minato panted for air as a blow hit his back and his diaphragm at the same time, and then an uppercut ripped against his chin as a clenched fist broke his pelvis from behind. 2 hands grabbed the base of his wings and the yondaime started panicking, tiredly breathing out as he struggled to fall forward in hopes of crawling away like a worm. But he had no such luck. A pair of 2 different feet securely fastened themselves to his shattered shoulder blades between the wings, and they harshly pulled back, ripping out the wings from the demon's body. Yee! The cursed seal couldn't help him again, and it seemed to know this. It stopped glowing, and the blonde father groaned as his body became smaller, returning back to his human form, and the wounds he had sustained as a demon adjusted to his human body, worse off than it was supposed to be. His dislocated jaw wobbled as he blubbered out incoherent pleas, blood streamed down his eyes and his mouth. Sia, Pia dash. He cried as a firm slap crossed his face, dislodging more teeth and making them fall onto the ground. Minato puffed pitifully and fought to stay upright. His knees were blown out, and his elbows were in pieces. He could barely see from his one good eye, and his spine was hardly able to keep him sitting up. Terror struck him as his eyes cast down to his legs, breathing frantically as he only saw 2 bleeding stumps and his legs laying haphazardly before them, pale from lack of blood. The Kage sobbed and another slap raced over his face, flipping his tongue over in his bloody mouth. A firm hand grabbed his cheeks and snapped fingers in front of his eyes to clear the haze. Minato's dying eyes blinked and tried to adjust to look at the person, gulping as he saw it was his son. Naruto cracked a small smirk and said over his shoulder to Naruko, who was standing behind her king brother with her arms crossed. "I remember begging him when he dropped us off, right sis?" The blonde's mouth dropped open and he whispered in a dry, raspy voice. "Mirror shihai ororai ishi." Naruko shook her head and said with a grim smile, "No mercy. No forgiveness." He placed his right hand on the top of Minato's head as he released hold of his father's cheeks, and Naruko stood at his side, her right fist rearing back with sharp, 5-inch claws. Naruko's hand rocketed forward, coated with Kyuubi chakra, and tore into his chest. "Yurig!" The yondaime puffed. His one good eye started rolling into the back of his head, and his life started flashing before his eyes as Naruko's fist closed around his heart, and Naruto's fingers dug deeper into his broken cranium, gripping his brain with the tips of his fingers. Starting with the day he had been picked up by the Sandaime, and enrolled into the academy, picked by the late Toad Sage to be in his team, and then apprenticed by the man as he became Chunin. Then he finally married the love of his life, Kushina, and lost her again after the Kyuubi attack. He handed over his children to Orochimaru and more or less discarded them from his head. It all moved in a slur of color and sound. Wind blew in his ears and he could vaguely taste iron on his overturned tongue. The light shining through his eyes, the pair of vengeful eyes staring down at him, moved back as his soul drifted backwards into a pitch-black tunnel, looking back at the only source of light coming from the end of the tunnel. He could feel his mouth open as he tried to scream, beg, plead for them to spare him. He felt many pairs of hands grab his body and drag him back, pulling his immobile body back as he tried to wail for mercy. There was a crack and all he knew was darkness, the feel of the icy hands running a path of fiery chill over his body and demonic laughter. Naruto and Naruko stood back, releasing hold of their father, and watched as the man crumpled onto his back. Minato Namikaze was dead. The 2 redheads stared down at what they had done and breathed out as one. Naruto shook his hand and hummed in irritation at the blood there, nodding his thanks as Naruko unsealed a bottle of water and poured it onto his hands as he washed them, drying them on his overcoat. He helped her pour water on her hands as well, and she rubbed them onto her blood-speckled red shirt. The girl sighed and her shoulders sagged in relief, feeling the massive weights lift off her shoulders as the plans she had been making with her brother concerning her father had finally come to pass. She looked to Naruto and gently nudged him with her elbow, sending a relieved smile to him. He reciprocated and returned his eyes down to the pathetic, despicable lump of skin and bones lying dead on the ground. Naruko licked her dry lips, murmuring, "What now?" A tiny smile grew on Naruto's face, and he threw his overcoat open, showing two hand-sized scrolls stashed into the two inner pockets. He removed the scroll on the right and grinned as he said, "Now we eat some ice cream." The girl giggled and playfully punched her godly brother's shoulder, eliciting a pleased chuckle from the boy. "Sounds like a plan, bro." 4 months later. The burning crater that used to be Konohagakure no Sato. The partly barren land that was now fire country. A pair of black boots scuffed against the ground and the owner hummed lowly. His black with red-ringed eyes twinkled at what he saw partly buried under the rubble of the destroyed Hokage's tower. A broken Crowley and Bu mask. He picked it up and looked down at it, idly nodding for Hamato, his head of intelligence and interrogation, to speak. AIM is now successfully off the ground and linked to the kingdom. The Kiri and Kumo rebels had been squashed, and your device is fully powered and ready for use, my lord Naruto. The grizzled man said, intently watching as his king blew off the dust from the mask and examined it. Are the people ready for the trip, Satoshi? Naruto mumbled to his head of rescue and support, who also doubled as the chief of police. Yes, sir. All citizens are securely in their houses and have been instructed to stay put unless told otherwise. The frizzy-haired man briefly looked up and saw the flying kingdom hovering peacefully thousands of miles above them. His police officers were in constant correspondence with him to ensure he was up to date on the situation in the kingdom. At that moment the only people allowed out of their houses and accommodations were the police and gold ranks, while the platinum ranks were on the ground with their king. Naruko and Junior were currently in Kushina's house with their mother. Nirvana, what is the condition of the kingdom's thrusters and propellers? Fully operational, Lord Naruto. Pressure and climatic/atmospheric control seals? Magi answered. Quadruple fortified, my king. Any of our own on the ground? He directed this question to his headhunter, Mora. No, sir, all are in the kingdom. Naruto slowly nodded and dropped the mask onto the ground, looking around them at the chaos that had occurred during the aftermath of his global tournament. Konoha had managed to make it to the semi-finals against Kiri. The arena had been grass country, and each country was represented by their best. Konoha by Uchiha Sasuke and Kiri by Chujiro, seeing as Mei Terumi had gotten a severe inferiority complex after her battle with Naruto. It had ended in Kiri's favor, and the Tsukai kingdom had rained fire and brimstone from the heavens onto Hidden Leaf. The reward for Kiri was a week's grace, where no Tsukai soldier would be in their village, but the village had used that opportunity to organize a rebellion against the kingdom, spearheaded by Ao of Kiri and Samui of Kumo, the latter of which had migrated to Kiri with a few of her comrades before Hidden Lightning was removed from the map. On the last day of the week they had invited the king to a feast to celebrate their success in defeating every other village and country, and had launched an ambush by planting explosives in his chair. They didn't count on Naruto humoring them by sitting down and absorbing the blast with his eyes, shooting out the compressed explosion out and making the person that had ushered him into his seat, Ao, explode into bloody chunks. The other rebels took this as a signal to fight, and they were all subdued to the very last person. They had been surprised when Naruto simply ordered for his soldiers to leave and followed after them. Though this surprise turned into terror as they saw the moon come down from the sky. Naruto always kept his word. Go back to the kingdom. The platinum ranks didn't raise any arguments, flying into the sky to the kingdom. When he was sure they were all gone he looked around for the very last time and lifted off the ground slowly. His right and left hand closed gently and he pushed them outwards, opening them to reveal two black orbs that fit his palm, spiraling inwards with gravitational pull. He reared his right hand back and threw the ball in his hand forward, shooting it as far as Kumo, and he did so with the left orb, taking it to the island the clan heirs and genin had been hiding on. The orbs dragged up massive clumps of earth and steadily grew in size, even as Naruto turned away and flew up to his kingdom with an ear-splitting crack. He landed at the very edge of his kingdom, before the sentry post, occupied by Nirvana, Magi and Hamato. The king watched as the moons started to increase in size, eating away at the already destroyed planet. Naruto flicked his hands over the earth below him and a massive fissure cracked open on the ground miles below him. The planet groaned as the king kept on pushing it open, exposing the volatile core at the center of the earth. The Tsukai kingdom rose higher into the air and finally broke out of the atmosphere into space, when Naruto flicked his hands again and the moons screamed down to the earth. Bright light flashed as the planet imploded, the vibrations rocked through space like a supernova, but none of it penetrated the barriers of the great kingdom. The king admired his work for a moment before his right hand opened at his side and a golden gauntlet was fastened onto his hand by Nirvana, the creator of the gauntlet. Naruto closed his fist and admired the metal fist, a work of pure mastery and a harmonious combination of seal work and technology. There were 4 Sharingan eyes on each knuckle and a final Sharingan placed at the center of the gauntlet. All of the eyes were activated as Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan and spinning wildly. A/N, can you guess what I'm describing? Obito and Itachi's eyes and one of Madara's, the other one was sealed away in the king's office. Naruto's mutated Rinnegan glowed and he lifted his gauntlet high into the air, his feet stuck firmly onto the ground and making sure his subordinates were safely back inside the sentry post. His body burst onto fire as he channeled his Kyuubi chakra and then the fire sputtered once before it changed to pure black. He said, Demon Rinnegan Kitsune, Rinne Sharingan, Kamui Multiverse Track and Propel. The jutsu and the gauntlet alerted him on a nearby universe, and he grabbed hold of it with his mind. As he sharply dragged his arm down, brilliant light overcame the kingdom and they were gone in the blink of an eye. The king and his sister had finally done what they had been planning to do for years, killed their father. It had taken a display of global invasion, mass genocide, and to finally meet his children face to face to get the man to finally see he was always in the wrong. Minato died a disgraceful, agonizing death. Naruto and Naruko finally found peace. Epilogue. What happens next? 1 month later. Location. Yet to be determined. A hair of spiky red hair bobbed along to the music resonating through a pair of sophisticated wireless red headphones. His eyes were closed as he allowed the hype music to pump into his mind, tapping his knees and cracking a small grin as the music seemed to pump him up but at the same time calm him down. Funny how music worked. His legs swung freely off the very edge of the flying kingdom, but a few minutes into the song he pulled his right leg up close to his chest and wrapped his arms around it, perching his head on his knee. Then he opened his eyes, beholding the wide expanse of land that lay out for several miles under his kingdom, peppered with skyscrapers and other metal buildings, though it seemed that the place was not as populated as he guessed other cities were. The drummer in his ears was entering a frenzy. He sighed and begrudgingly removed it from his head and set it on his neck before the music could take him to another place entirely. It was a rising, 2-man band that was making waves through his kingdom. He hadn't personally met the band, but he had secretly attended one of their concerts being held during the kingdom-wide festival held the week Kiri were also celebrating their success in the global tournament. He and his soldiers still hadn't found out name of the world they were in, but the new world knew of their presence. They had appeared with the crack of the sky, hovering peacefully in the atmosphere, merely a small 5-foot square if one was to look up from the ground. The alarms had blared loud enough to reach his ears, hearing a frantic voice scream, "Dragon level emergency! Dragon level emergency! Dragon level emergency!" The king had his priorities set, so he ignored the alarms and the swarming people that were gathering in the city below him, and activated the Fuinjutsu, kingdom-wide illusion to cloak his home so as to make it look like the rest of the sky, hiding any heat signature or any other means of detection as he took off his gauntlet, handing it to Nirvana to check it. Went back into his kingdom to determine if there were any problems the multiverse teleportation had caused. There were problems. The electrical grid for the whole kingdom had been completely blown, from sockets to light bulbs to even the backup generators. The trees, grass and shrubs began to deteriorate as they tried to acclimate to the absurd lack of nature chakra in the air. The climate/atmospheric seal had been destabilized because the trip had sucked up most of the chakra batteries used to power that seal alone, seeing as the other seals were being powered by other batteries, which in turn had been depleted but not more so than the atmosphere-maintaining seal. The kingdom's radio towers had shut down by a freak lightning bolt that had made its way through the atmosphere seal and struck the central tower, closing down all the earbuds, telephones, radio channels and television stations being broadcasted in the kingdom. The last problem was that all perishable goods in the kingdom had expired. Naruto theorized that it was because of their swift trip through space and time into an entirely different universe than their own. It would have caused mass hysteria if not for their king remaining level-headed as he heard all these reports. The king had been the one to look over the problems, with the advice of all his division heads, whether soldier or civilian divisions. The solutions to these problems were all straightforward and quick to implement, but the Tsukai kingdom was not built on those two words, but emphasized on efficiency and carefulness. Their emphasis was on personal security before global invasion. The solar power seals engraved onto the roofs of every house was activated from the central power in the Fuinjutsu department headquarters, and every inventor, copper to even platinum, were dispatched to the hundreds of houses and establishments to fix and or replace the broken electrical implements. As they did this, the inventors division collaborated with the intelligence and interrogation and Fuinjutsu division to investigate why the electrical grid had exploded and create ways to curb any future occurrence. Very soon the grid was back on, and the houses were alight once again. At the same time, if not before the electrical issue of the kingdom was solved, the Environmental Protection Department of the Civilian Division attended to the struggling wildlife, getting samples of the air in the new world and replicating it into the now repaired environment seal. Nature was steadily returning back to normal, and the department had been gently coaxing the new environment into accepting the nature chakra the kingdom's environment thrived in. The problem of the radio tower was fixed by the inventors, and fruits and vegetables were being quickly grown to restore the perishable goods lost, equally distributed among the people and stocked back into the kingdom's supermarket. The police, from support and rescue, helped maintain peace and order as the kingdom was rapidly adapting to the new atmosphere they had found themselves in. It had taken 3 long, busy weeks before everything was returned back to normal, and in a constant state of improvement, but it had taken 2 more additional weeks to soothe the tension among the civilians. To do so, the king had ordered for there to be a military parade to display the sheer strength of the army before the civilians, organized at Tur or the soldier division headquarters to show that the Tsukai force was and always will be 3 steps ahead of any danger, ready to counter at a moment's notice, and the graduating ceremony of highest class of the Tsukai Academy was widely broadcasted and attended by the citizens. The graduating ceremony consisted of the graduating students performing a series of tasks, assigned into teams of 5 based on their specializations, which would end up with the students facing off in the Kingdom Stadium in a friendly match. Normally, the ceremony could be watched by anyone and could be reported in the Kingdom's newspaper and news station, but actual fights were not allowed to be seen on screen. But Naruto had bent his own law to show the people that even the youngest generation of soldiers was totally capable of protecting them. It would probably be the last time it would happen. The graduating students saw this as an honor, to be the first to have their ceremony attended in droves and widely broadcasted, and in turn they performed to the best of their abilities. There were people from the ground that had shown the ability to fly, circling around where they had last seen the flying chunk of land but leaving when they were hit by the dual disorientation and disillusionment seals covering the kingdom. They were still charged and ready for anything. Perfect. Naruto made an acknowledging sound as someone sat down beside him and bumped her shoulder against his. Naruto turned to his sister and smiled brightly, sensing his younger brother behind him. The budding, bronze-ranked ninjutsu specialist huffed as he sat down on Naruto's other side, his large eyes admiring the city of steel before him. "Sup, bro?" the girl said with a teasing smirk. She had, thankfully, gotten over her lord-brother phase and was referring to him as she always did, though still somewhat treating him with higher esteem than the red-haired boy twin could admit he was comfortable with. Junior, though. He had a big brother complex. Red dusted over the boy's pale cheeks and Naruto turned and smiled at him as well. "What's on your mind, bro?" Naruko asked, noticing the mild excitement that danced in her brother's godly eyes, an excitement that excited her. "This place has potential," the king said. Naruto held out his hand to his sister, the other one safely holding the palm-sized storage scroll, as his total control over gravity shuffled their father's corpse into a kneeling position, forcing him into a somewhat sitting dog position. He helped her sit down and took his place beside her. He smoothly unsealed a tub of ice cream. The container read Mama June's chocolate chip ice cream. The lid flipped off and landed haphazardly on the ground as the boy passed over a plastic spoon he had unsealed to his sister. The girl wasted no time digging in, even as the boy unsealed 4 more ice cream tubs from the scroll, stacking them on the ground on top of the other, and stashing the scroll back into his inner overcoat pocket. He rushed into the tub with the same fervor as his sister, mentally thanking Indra for ensuring that no soldier entered grass country, giving some privacy. The twins happily swallowed the ice cream, powering through the earth-shattering brain freeze until it became too unbearable to hold, clenching their teeth and rubbing the sides of their heads in a vain attempt at unfreezing their brains. Naruto pushed his tongue to the roof of his mouth and Naruko followed his example. The two shared a silent, mutual message and dove back down into the ice cream, stubbornly fighting through the resulting brain freeze after 8 massive spoons. They were like 2 kids that could not get enough Mama June's ice cream, especially the 2 cases of chocolate chip and single, good old classic vanilla-flavored ice cream. The image was only spoiled if one was to look carefully under them at what they were sitting on, by the bleeding corpse of the blonde-haired legend known as Minato Namikaze. The man was crumpled, sitting on his knees and his elbows, and under his elbows were only elevated by a few flat rocks to make their makeshift seat level. It was a bit cramped, but they made do and ignored the small space in favor of swallowing the delicious, cold treats the king had bought through his civilian division head. The man's head lay on his cheek and his horrifically wide right eye, the left was punctured, stared into space, unfeeling as the 2 ate on his dead body. When they were on their 3rd tub and still going strong, Naruto threw all caution to the wind and removed the 2 scrolls in his inner coat pockets, unsealing the vast array of ice creams, different colors and flavors thought he same, 8 by 4-inch containers. Naruko gave a mighty swallow, having to wrench her eyes shut and defiantly battle the warring brain freeze going on in her head, and beheld the ice cream laying in 4 stacks of 8 before her and her brother. She gave Naruto a messy kiss on his cheek, appreciating him more than ever, and returned to emptying the tubs. Her cheeks puffed out with creamy goodness as she mumbled. After that fight tournament, she gulped down the contents of her mouth and licked the corners of her lips. What next? The king unabashedly snatched the tub from her and tipped its contents into his mouth. He threw the container away and answered, "Pack into another universe and invade when we're ready." He flipped open the lid of another tub, saying, "It'll be great for the soldiers' morale and good training." The girl mused over what her brother had said. She had to admit, with the prospect of there being many universes, they would be very busy for a very long time. "That can't be all, right?" Naruto snorted. "Of course not. I'm not all about invade and conquer, dear sister." Their pace slowed down a bit after their 13th tub. "Because we don't hold any grudge with the universes we're invading, we can actually take our time, learning and developing, as long as we don't slack off." He shrugged and licked his bottom lip. "We might even find a place I consider worth enough not to destroy. Who knows? Who knows? There were over 1 million universes out there. There has to be at least a few that could give his soldiers some sort of trouble." The youngest sibling quirked an eyebrow. "The deployment bulletin on the kingdom's all-rank soldier network, or ANET, didn't say anything about a spy being sent out." The boy was referring to the online network for soldiers that spread and revealed information depending on rank and importance. It was controlled by Hamato of Intelligence and Interrogation, under authority of the king. Only soldiers were privy to create accounts, 1 per person, and read information, and any civilian caught would be punished. Among the information that could be spread was a list of spies on the ground, which only bronze to obsidian ranks could read. "I've sent no spies or scouts to the ground," Naruto said as he deeply inhaled, feeling the energy and the paranoid panic under him. There was also something big, no, something's colossal, that walked around with the people in the city beneath them and in other cities. He had not left the kingdom since his arrival, so he had only been content to peer through a telescope, realizing that, against expectations, they were people, or creatures, with the power were not behemoths but rather normal people. Albeit they dressed up in costumes, and some wielded an array of weapons. Naruto masterfully suppressed his excitement to encounter these people, in battle or otherwise, but Naruko felt what her twin was feeling, buzzing and shaking with anticipation. The enthusiasm was basically pouring off her body in waves, but Junior, who was still trying to build a connection with his older siblings, looked at the pair with confused eyes. What's going on? We want to explore, little bro. Naruko squealed, throwing her left arm over Naruto's shoulder and shaking the king. The king chuckled and shook his head in exasperation. This time we take our time, even if it's a year, we understand this world before we invade. Hell, we might not even destroy this place, we'll see. Knowing his track record for being brutal and cold-hearted to those that stood against him, he very well might destroy this new world. It was a logical possibility. He got up and dragged his sister onto her feet as well, motioning for the other boy to rise. He looked over the boy carefully, noting the blonde's blue shirt and black pants with the bronze armor shoulder plates, chest plate, forearm protector and shin guards strongly strapped on and the dual sickles on his back. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Do you have your stuff packed? Junior opened his left palm and showed his big brother the storage seal there. Yes, Lord Brother. The older brother ran through a list of bare essentials and Junior ticked them off, even showing his big brother the items. Naruto then ran down another list of other items, less important but important nonetheless. Junior ticked them all off, except when the male redhead asked if he had a spare set of toothbrushes, of which Naruko interjected and said she had 3 spares. She didn't mind lending Junior 2 of them. With all the things they had on their person, they still intended to return to the kingdom every once in a while, but they wanted to truly explore the new world. Behind the king stood Yu, infiltration and espionage, assigning spies and scouts, instructing that there only be 5 spies and 5 scouts per city and the rest, if too many, to come back to the kingdom, ultimately waiting for Naruto's order. There were 400 of them and counting, and all were either gold or silver rank. Naruto gave the man a thumb up and lifted 5 fingers, signaling him to wait 5 minutes. Naruto looked sternly to his siblings, saying, We aren't going down to look for any trouble, only to explore and discover. A simple scout, socialize and report mission. If any fights come, then we only attack to incapacitate, employ code triple negative, he said, forcing the 2 to dig through their minds to remember what the code meant. Junior's eyes lit up and then Naruko's. The code was to attack and leave behind little to no body damage, wiping away the last 1 hour of the victim's memories with the secret jutsu Orochimaru had created, simply called memory wipe. It was so that the victim would think that the fight was all a dream. All the spies and scouts were notified of the king's order. The king then placed his other arm over his younger brother's shoulders and beamed at them as he fell off the kingdom with them, without a parachute but with the 2 soldiers having flight seals under their metal boots. Let's have fun. Thousands of miles below the kingdom, inside an abandoned apartment building, a bald-haired man poked his head out of the window of his apartment room as he saw a flock of black birds fly through the sky from behind a cloud. He blinked once, a dull expression on his face as he discarded the birds from his mind. Master Saitama, a blonde-haired man with robotic body parts, called to the Cape Baldy as he pushed open the door with his right foot, his arms filled with shopping bags. The supermarket has run out of toilet paper. Saitama sighed sourly. Damn it! Unbeknownst to him, he would meet the Rinnegan King on multiple occasions, eventually facing off in a battle of the ages to determine the fate of the world. It would be chaotic, destructive, catastrophic and even apocalyptic. But that was a story for another time. And that concludes the final part of this story. Thank you for spending your time here at Ichiraku Ramen and listening all the way to the end. Your support helps keep these stories alive and allows the shinobi world to continue through new adventures and alternate timelines. If you enjoyed Child of Hate, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. Once again, full credit goes to Foy the Snooze Button, the original writer of this story. If you would like to read the original version, You can find the link to the story in the description below. Let me know in the comments what story you would like to hear next. Until the next time, stay safe, and I'll see you again at Ichiraku Ramen.